Chapter 29:11. Don't stop them. Let them attack together. Yi Shiwen's cold voice penetrated the battle between the two. He was not affected by the battle between the two. His voice was accurate. Big brother! Young Koan Peng looked at Yi Shiwen in surprise. He did not expect Yi Shiwen to make such a request. It doesn't matter. They are just some small fries. They only dare to come when I am not at my peak. They have already lost the heart of a warrior. Now that I have dealt with them all, I want to see how many more people will come knowing that they are going to die. Yi Shiwen shook his head and said, Okay, big brother, I will not intervene. Young Koan Peng finally decided to respect Yi Shiwen's wishes and did not intervene directly. However, he would not just stand by and watch. He had never put down the yin-yang two worlds diagram. He was afraid that someone would suddenly attack him with a Taoist instrument. Without the protection of a Taoist instrument, the only power that could threaten Yi Shiwen was probably a Taoist instrument. Boom! The battle began in an instant. Those experts who had been ready to attack rushed forward. There were not only experts from the Tian clan or the Netherworld Kingdom. Experts from all sides attacked together. There was only one goal, and that was to work together to kill the guy in the field who fought Ming Guang to a draw with his bare hand. In particular, they were very dissatisfied. Could it be that they really had no deterrent power? He actually asked a group of them to attack together. He did not seem to care about them at all. Countless divine tools flew into the sky one after another, and then brought along rays of light that filled the sky, tearing the blue dome of heaven, causing the world to tremble. There was a kind of imposing aura that could suppress the 9 heavens circling around, and directly bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. However, at this moment Yi Shiwen attacked. His expression was very indifferent, without the slightest emotional fluctuation. He raised his hand and directly slapped the Taoist instruments that were falling from the sky. Boom! 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 Everyone only heard a series of heavy blows. Then, they saw Yi Shiwen send hundreds of Taoist instruments and divine weapons flying with his bare hand. These were not ordinary weapons. Any one of them was a high-grade divine weapon, or even a supreme-grade divine weapon. The materials used to forge them were also top-grade materials that were rarely seen in thousands of years. Usually, they were invincible when used to attack. Now, they were sent flying by Yi Shiwen casually. It was as if they were fighting 1,000 caddies with little effort, and they were all sent flying one after another. However, while everyone was still immersed in Yi Shiwen's amazing feat, Yi Shiwen's counterattack had already begun. In an instant, he had already escaped from the attack range of the nether light and directly pounced into the crowd, starting a massacre. Pooh! 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 At this moment, Yi Shiwen had truly demonstrated in front of everyone what it meant by skill is close to the truth. It was just a simple martial art move, but in his hands, it had erupted with astonishing might that was simply unimaginable to ordinary people. He was like a bloodthirsty devil, piercingly cold and resolute, and a single punch or kick was capable of easily annihilating an extraordinary expert. Regardless of whether it was a divine master or a divine king, there was no difference between them in front of him. With a single strike, his physical body was torn to pieces and shattered with a loud bang. Blood and white bones flew everywhere, and this bloody scene caused one's hair to stand on end. However, at this time, there was no room for either side to retreat. These people had come to kill Yi Shiwen at this time, naturally to eradicate future troubles. If they couldn't eradicate Yi Shiwen today, they would definitely have to face Yi Shiwen's revenge in the future. It was better to die in battle here and then eradicate him. And Yi Shiwen was even more determined to kill. He was originally a decisive person, and now that he was considered weak and easily bullied during the Cutting Tao period, he had long had enough of it. He had to let these guys swallow the bitter fruit that they had sown. The earth was trembling, and more than a dozen riders rushed towards Yi Shiwen. They were all riding strange beasts, and they were very powerful. At this time, these people had completely integrated into one with their beast. The person leading them was even a powerful quasi-emperor. These people were also existences who could move unhindered in a region on normal days, and today, they were entrusted by someone to eradicate Yi Shiwen. At this time, they took advantage of the time when Yi Shiwen was killing others and rushed in front of him. With just you guys? Yi Shiwen suddenly stepped on the ground, and in an instant, the world shook violently, and the earth directly shattered, rolling up thousands of layers of soil waves, mixed with boulders flying in all directions. This chaotic scene stagnated the momentum of these powerhouses. Their indomitable tacit understanding was also interrupted, and the method was so simple. Taking advantage of the time when they were stunned, Yi Shiwen made his move. He leaped up, and he didn't use any magical law, just relying on the amazing explosive power of his physical body. He directly stepped on the ground, and his whole body shot out like an arrow from the bow, directly rushing into the group of more than a dozen riders. The terrifying power combined with the terrifying momentum directly caused the world to tremble, and in an instant, several of the riders were smashed to death. Their position happened to be right in the middle. And this time, the collision set off a wave of air, which also caused the other riders to be thrown off their horses. Even the strange beasts under their crotch couldn't withstand the sudden attack of such a terrifying power. However, Yi Shiwen's battle had just begun. He stopped his figure in midair, and then launched an amazing killing. Bang! 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 Yi Shiwen punched and kicked, and these riders, together with the strange beasts, were pierced. Blood splattered, splashing in all directions. Help! When the leader of these riders saw this scene, he couldn't help but stare angrily. These were his old subordinates who had followed him for countless years. He didn't know how many times they had fought with him through mountains of corpses and seas of blood. They didn't die in the hands of others, but died in the hands of Yi Shiwen. He was burning with anger, but there was nothing he could do. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. Every time he rushed over, he would pounce on empty air, and the battle would be completely over. How could such a sullen feeling not make him extremely depressed? It's your turn soon. After Yi Shiwen killed the last rider together with the strange beasts, he looked at the leader of the strange beast. He didn't remember offending this team of strange beasts. After all, their strength was absolutely powerful. If they had committed a crime, Yi Shiwen definitely knew that there was only one possibility, and that was, they were hired by others. Whether they were doing this to repay a favor, or simply for money, he wanted to let everyone know that he wasn't someone to be trifled with. It was best not to provoke him, or else they would be courting death. Yi Shiwen directly pulled up the great spear in his hand, and instantly threw it towards the leader of the strange beast. This great spear was like a big dragon between heaven and earth, finally breaking free from the shackles, and roared as it pounced towards the leader of the strange beasts. In an instant, a shield appeared in front of the leader of the strange beasts. Dang! This great spear directly pierced into the shield. Although because the material was not as good as the shield, it couldn't penetrate, but it directly tore countless cracks. That terrifying power passed through the shield to the body of the strange beast. He immediately let out a muffled groan, feeling that both of his arms were completely crippled. Even after most of the power was removed, it could still be so terrifying. It was simply suffocating. At the same time, the strange beast under him let out a blood-curdling screech, and directly prostrated. Its forelegs were directly broken, completely because of the power contained in Yi Shiwen's great spear. How is this possible? I'm a quasi-emperor. The leader of the strange beasts couldn't believe it. He was a quasi-emperor expert, and the strange beast under him was even a divine king. How could it not even be able to resist this kind of power? A saying suddenly came to his mind. This was the saying, "One strong man can defeat 10 skilled men." What martial arts, what magical power, in the face of Yi Shiwen's terrifying power, seemed to be meaningless. It was really too child's play, and there was no way for him to fight back. However, before he could think too much, his vision suddenly darkened. A black shadow appeared in front of him, and directly blasted a fist over. Dang! With a sound like that of a great bell, Yi Shiwen's fist blasted through his superb divine shield, instantly causing it to collapse and disintegrate in the sky, almost breaking into pieces. Yi Shiwen directly attacked, and this power was even more terrifying. The hands of the leader of the strange beasts directly exploded into a bloody mist on the spot, and he screamed again and again. Then, he was directly chopped in half by Yi Shiwen's hand blade, and his spirit was completely destroyed. He couldn't be more dead. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. All of this seemed to take a long time, but in fact, it was only a matter of a few breaths. Yi Shiwen killed more than a dozen strange beasts led by a quasi-emperor, displaying amazing combat power. Even without magic power or magical power, he was still one of the most terrifying existences in the world. Seeing this scene, Ming Guang only felt incomparably angry. Was Yi Shiwen playing with him? Seeing this scene, he only felt incomparably angry. Was Yi Shiwen playing with him? Seeing this scene, Ming Guang only felt incomparably angry. Was Yi Shiwen playing with him? Yi Shiwen, don't be so ostentatious. At that moment, Ming Guang finally made his move. An ancient sword appeared in his hand, and he slashed down instantly. However, there was no sword light in this slash. Instead, there was a terrifying sword momentum. It was as if he was suppressing rather than killing. His cultivation in swordsmanship had also reached a shocking level. It was fully revealed at this time. He had been caught off guard by Yi Shiwen earlier, so he hadn't been able to attack. A terrifying aura was awakening in his body. It was like a vast ocean that directly erupted. The ancient sword took on the form of a qilin and expanded in the face of the wind. It was as if an archaic mountain was falling from the sky and chopping down. Clang! However, a shocking scene occurred. In the face of such a peerless attack, Yi Shiwen didn't retreat even a little. Instead, he welcomed it with his bare hands. Chapter 29:12. Boom! There was a shocking collision. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Yi Shiwen's fist directly hit the ancient sword, and an endless energy tide erupted instantly. Immediately afterward, the ancient sword trembled violently, and the brilliance on it quickly converged. The great ways and rules attached to the countless ancient swords were all completely annihilated in an instant. 6 paths of reincarnation fist. Many people exclaimed. As Yi Shiwen became more and more famous, the 6 paths of reincarnation fist that he cultivated also became more and more famous. The fist technique that was once invincible in the past had now reached a whole new level. It was obviously not blessed with any spiritual power, nor was it attached with any magical power, but there was a kind of terrifying aura surrounding it, as if it could crush the entire world. Again, Yi Shiwen shouted and directly chased in the direction of Ming Guang. Then, a sky-flipping seal directly smashed down and hit the ancient sword in his hand. Boom! The ancient sword wailed violently and trembled continuously. The divine splendor and nomological laws on its body were completely withdrawn in an instant. Dense cracks began to appear on the body of the sword. Ming Guang's hands began to shatter and blood splattered. Ming Guang was horrified. He retreated repeatedly, frantically pulling a safe distance. Huff, huff. Blood flowed from his palms, flowed over the sword body, and dripped down. The golden color was particularly eye-catching. The blood on this sword was actually not from others, but from his own. What an irony! For the first time, his eyes showed a bit of fear. This ancient sword of his was found in the deepest part of the Netherworld Kingdom. It was left by a peerless master a long time ago, and later refined by him. She didn't expect that a single punch from Yi Shiwen would actually cause numerous cracks to appear on it. How strong was Yi Shiwen's fist? Just his physical body was already so strong. If his cultivation, his spiritual power, and his Tao tool were all there, how terrifying would he be? At this time, he suddenly recalled a terrifying rumor. Several decades ago, even the soul of that lord had perished in Yi Shiwen's hands. This had led to a riot in the entire Netherworld kingdom. Therefore, he had been assigned this task. Originally, he did not believe it. What kind of existence was that? Even though he had already stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm, the gap between them was still like heaven and earth. Now, he believed that there might really be such a possibility. If it was just a primordial spirit, it might really be possible. However, Yi Shiwen didn't give him any time to hesitate. He took a step forward and arrived in front of him on the spot. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist smashed the principles in the sky, and the aftermath seemed to destroy the stars in the distance. Damn it! Ming Guang finally panicked. He opened his Death God Nation again, trying to block Yi Shiwen's attack. However, it was useless. He was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. The punch landed on Ming Guang's body. Bang! There was a shocking collision. Ming Guang screamed on the spot and his body cracked. He couldn't resist Yi Shiwen's terrifying punch, and his whole body flew out. Yi Shiwen continued to counterattack in an instant. He directly chased after Ming Guang and was about to kill him. Suddenly, a huge hand reached out from the void and pulled Ming Guang's body into the void. Yi Shiwen couldn't catch up. He could only watch this big hand save Ming Guang. Ming Di, it was Ming Di. If Yi Shiwen had the Avicii sword in his hand, he would have already slashed it. Unfortunately, he had lost his magical power and couldn't fight back. This change stunned everyone. Everyone thought that Ming Guang would definitely die in Yi Shiwen's hands. They didn't expect that he would be saved. Apart from Yi Shiwen, no one knew who it was that had come to rescue them, because they couldn't think of anyone who could save someone from such a cruel Yi Shiwen. That didn't make sense. Even a peak quasi-emperor realm expert couldn't save someone from Yi Shiwen so easily. In the void, the big hand disappeared without a trace. Only an eye was left, looking at Yi Shiwen coldly. Yes, they could see an extreme coldness and ruthlessness in this eye, as if it viewed everything in the world as inanimate objects. That emotionless gaze caused everyone to feel a chill in their hearts. It was like an ant meeting a giant who didn't care about its life at all. How terrifying was this? Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back. His figure was like a mountain standing in the air, straight into the sky. He stared at the eye from afar, showing no signs of fear. Yi Shiwen? That cold and emotionless voice rang out, causing everyone to feel a chill down their spines. How terrifying was that voice? Just hearing that voice alone made them have the urge to kneel down. Who the hell is this? Such a thought emerged in everyone's mind. Ming Di, enemies really don't meet unless they're not enemies, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Ming Di. These two words instantly shocked many people. Even the most ignorant person would understand what these two words meant. A true emperor was terrifying. Even if he was in an incomplete state, he was still far stronger than an ordinary peak quasi-emperor. That was how terrifying it was. Especially in this era where emperors didn't appear, it was even more terrifying. Moreover, it seemed as if Yi Shiwen and Ming Di had a grudge against each other. This shocked many people even more. Who could become enemies with an emperor? This in itself was not an easy thing to do. With the strength of an emperor, no enemy could escape from their clutches. Their enemies were all dead, so there was no need to talk about becoming enemies. What kind of enmity did they have? Moreover, it didn't seem like Yi Shiwen had suffered a great loss. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so calm. You've recovered? Yi Shiwen said slowly. That's right, I've recovered. That means your death is coming soon. A cold and emotionless voice came from the eye. Yi Shiwen laughed coldly. So what if you've recovered? How much strength do you have after forcefully recovering after being severely injured? If I can kill you once, I can kill you a second time. Everyone was in an uproar. Indeed, it wasn't Yi Shiwen who had suffered a loss. Instead, it was Ming Di who had suffered a great loss. Moreover, it had been beheaded. Although it didn't sound like the original body, but the primordial spirit seemed very terrifying. How much had Yi Shiwen grown in private? Ming Di didn't say a word. Instead, he glared at Yi Shiwen with his cold eyes. This eye seemed to have come from countless dimensions. That incomparably cold gaze would make anyone who looked at it tremble in fear. Even if you're Ming Di, don't even think about being arrogant. Young Koan Ping roared from the side. The yin and yang images above his head instantly flew out and shattered Ming Di's eye. It couldn't reform again. His expression was very serious and dignified. Everyone knew very well what an emperor lord meant. But he still attacked without hesitation. Just when everyone was still immersed in the situation where even an emperor lord had attacked, Yi Shiwen suddenly attacked. The ancient sword in Ming Guang's hand was instantly grabbed by Yi Shiwen. The ancient sword, which was originally on the verge of destruction in Ming Guang's hand, seemed to be on the verge of shattering in the next second. But in Yi Shiwen's hand, it instantly exploded with astonishing power. The body of the sword, which was on the verge of collapse and looked as if it could collapse at any moment, quickly recovered to its original state. A divine master died in Yi Shiwen's hands before he could even react. Kill, fight him to the death. The people who had been besieging Yi Shiwen finally reacted. They roared and rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. Instantly, battle cries filled the entire space again. The divine weapons exploded with dazzling light, forming a shocking torrent that rushed towards Yi Shiwen. This was like a torrent of steel. The mountains and valleys trembled. None of these people were weak, especially when it came to protecting their lives. Now that even Ming Guang had been defeated and rescued, who else could help them? They could only fight to the death and hope that they could exhaust Yi Shiwen to death. Kill! The air was boiling and violent, and battle cries shook the earth. They had already attacked. There was no room for regret, and there was no way out. They all rushed over crazily. Yi Shiwen, who was at his lowest state, was their only chance. However, even with that being the case, they still stood no chance against Yi Shiwen. With a single swing of Yi Shiwen's sword, Yi Shiwen directly cut a god king in half. His soul was destroyed as he died on the spot. He was not Yi Shiwen's opponent at all. Then, a few more sword strikes came down. Even the heaven and earth collapsed, and a large area collapsed. This was a land of death. Even though some people were already at the quasi-emperor level, they could not do it. In front of Yi Shiwen, they were all laughable ants. Yi Shiwen killed mercilessly. No one could stop him. He had even killed the spirit of an ancient emperor, let alone them. He had a terrifying aura. There was no expression on his face. He was neither cold nor resentful. He was just indifferent. At this moment, it was as if he was just doing a trivial thing with his sword. In just a few dozen breaths, these people had been slaughtered by Yi Shiwen. His surroundings were already empty. There were countless corpses under his feet, and blood flowed like a river. There was silence. There was no one left except for him and young Koan Ping. The crowd watching the battle from afar held their breath. They were shocked by the massacre in front of them. It was like hell. Chapter 29:13. Everyone was shocked. The massacre was over. It didn't last long at all. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. The difference in strength was much greater than the difference in the number of people on both sides. Before the battle began, everyone had some speculations about the outcome of the battle. However, no one thought that it would end with Yi Shiwen slaughtering everyone. It was even more exaggerated than the most exaggerated scene they had imagined. Yi Shiwen, who had lost his cultivation, was still as ferocious as ever. No, it seemed to be even more ferocious than when he was at his most ferocious. Yi Shiwen casually threw the sword aside. He didn't even greet young Koan Ping. He immediately immersed himself in his own sea of Tao and continued to walk forward. Young Koan Ping didn't care. The relationship between the two of them had long been indifferent. Yi Shiwen walked forward. This time, no one dared to covet Yi Shiwen. They didn't dare to peep at him at all. Yi Shiwen had frightened them. They didn't know where Yi Shiwen's limit was. The Heavenly Clan, who hated him to the core, couldn't send a large team to encircle him. This was because during this period of time, they were being watched by the allied forces of the various races. Once their army was mobilized, the allied forces of the various races would also be mobilized. Then, it would be meaningless. However, if they couldn't send enough experts, then it would be meaningless. Just like before, they also sent a large number of experts, but in the end, they were all killed by Yi Shiwen alone. This shocked the Heavenly Clan even more. With just his physical body, Yi Shiwen was comparable to a peak quasi-emperor. It wouldn't be so easy to kill him. At this time, they also focused most of their attention on DNI. As long as DNI achieved Tao, it would be useless no matter how heaven-defying Yi Shiwen was. However, at this time, following this battle, a shocking news set off a frenzy in the myriad heavens. That was, Ming Di might have revived. This was a real Emperor Lord. Judging from the conversation between Yi Shiwen and him, this shouldn't be an ordinary doppelganger, but a real Emperor Lord. Now, whether it was the battle between the Heavenly Clan or the allied forces of the various races, the most important reason was that there was no decisive strategic force. And this strategic force was the Emperor. Now that such a character at the Emperor level had appeared, one could imagine the impact on both sides. Originally, almost all the Emperor could be said to belong to either the Heavenly Clan or the allied forces of the various races. Therefore, if an Emperor appeared, there was nothing to say. But Ming Di was different. For a long time, Ming Di had been extremely mysterious. It could almost be said that he didn't show himself. He basically existed in the shadows of the heavens. Regardless of which side he joined, he would be able to change the situation instantly. No matter how much both sides hated this person who manipulated the dead and profaned death, for the sake of the final victory, they couldn't care less about all that. Soon, both of the Heavenly Clan and the allied forces of the allied forces of the allied forces of forces, they had T and the allied forces of the allied forces side, and the allied forces, the forces side of forces of the allied forces. Immediately, both sides fell into a dangerous situation. Yi Shiwen's existence was no different from a stabilizing force for the allied forces of the various races. Killing Yi Shiwen would be tantamount to cutting off one's own arm. Moreover, the words of the people of the Dark Kingdom might not be credible even if they killed Yi Shiwen. And they might not necessarily join their side. Wouldn't that be a trap if that happened? However, both sides had a concern. Was Yi Shiwen that easy to kill? Even a peak quasi-emperor might not be able to take him down. If they wanted to defeat him, they would probably have to use the trump cards and methods used to deal with sovereign emperors in order to succeed. The price was simply too high. Both sides wanted to use other conditions to exchange for the Nether Kingdom to join their side. Even the proud and arrogant Tian clan, who looked down on everyone else other than their own race, couldn't help but put down their pride and self-esteem when faced with a deadlock situation. Because such a deadlock would devour the lives of countless experts of the Tian clan every day. It was simply a flesh mill. In the face of such a loss, even the arrogant self-esteem had to lower its head. The only concern was that the strength of the Nether Kingdom was unknown. After so many years, no one knew what kind of strength they had accumulated. For other forces, the death of people was a loss and a great blow to their vitality. However, for the Nether Kingdom, it was a way to increase their strength. It was completely incomparable. It was just that the temptation of a sovereign emperor joining their side was too great. Even if there was only a small possibility, they were not willing to give up. For a time, the undercurrents were surging fiercely. During this process, Yi Shiwen was still continuing his journey of cutting the Tao. Step by step, he cut the Tao and walked towards the sealed place of the Tian clan. Another 20 years passed in the blink of an eye. Yi Shiwen suddenly disappeared in the sea of stars. He had disappeared in front of everyone. Everyone was stunned. After so many years, everyone seemed to have gotten used to Yi Shiwen always appearing in front of them. Just like that, he disappeared in front of them, causing many people to become nervous, especially the Tian clan. A statement suddenly came out. Yi Shiwen had completed cutting the Tao and remolded his own Tao. Only in this way could he regain his cultivation and power. He disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. This statement immediately set off shocking waves, especially when the entire Tian clan was still debating whether or not to send an army to eradicate Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had already disappeared, causing many people to become anxious. The sealed place of the Tian clan was in the crevice of the endless void. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to find it. However, after the return of the Tian clan in these years, the sealed place of the Tian clan was no longer a secret. It had become a place heavily guarded by the Tian clan. Especially at the beginning, there were Tian clan experts coming out of the sealed place at almost every moment and rushing to various battlefields. Over the years, the number of experts had gradually decreased. Most of the experts who should have come out had already come out. Even so, the Tian clan's heavy guard was still incomparably tight. A faintly discernible figure slowly appeared in the sealed place of the Tian clan. It was Yi Shiwen who had just recovered his cultivation. Who else could it be? Just as everyone had guessed, Yi Shiwen had indeed completed cutting the Tao and remolded his own Tao. Now, he had regained his cultivation and magical power. After cutting the Tao and cultivating the Tao, although Yi Shiwen's cultivation did not improve further, it was completely different from before. He had been reborn. If Yi Shiwen had felt that there was a huge wall in front of him that he could not cross, and that the amazing accumulation of the past was very likely to become his burden, then Yi Shiwen had now completely swept away the hidden dangers in his past cultivation through the method of cutting the Tao again. Most importantly, he had walked out of his own Tao. In the past, his cultivation had been comprehending the Tao of other clans, but he did not have his own Tao. In the past, he did not feel anything, but when he really reached this step, he understood that it was imperative to walk out of his own Tao. It was something that he had to do. Just like if one wanted to become a real emperor, he had to open up a unique Tao of his own. He could not walk side by side with others, nor could he follow others blindly. He had to be unique and open up his own Tao. Now, although Yi Shiwen could not say that he had opened up his own Tao, he had cleared up the veins of the Tao that he had cultivated, and was no longer confused by the Tao of others. The most obvious thing was that there was no barrier on his road to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. The obstacles that he felt difficult to cross previously no longer existed. As long as he had enough accumulation, he could naturally break through to the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. The only thing left was to prepare for the emperor's realm's great tribulation. This problem had already been placed in front of Yi Shiwen. Even Yi Shiwen didn't have any assurance as he thought of the terrifying emperor's realm's great tribulation. Since ancient times, many geniuses had appeared. They weren't inferior to the emperor's realm's great tribulation. People remembered the emperor's great tribulation from ancient times to the present. Who would remember the geniuses who had fought with them until their heads were bleeding? However, Emperor Enai was also about to achieve Tao. There was not much time left for Yi Shiwen. He could not slowly accumulate. He could only think of some special methods to make his cultivation advance by leaps and bounds. The sealed area controlled by the Tian clan had become an extremely prosperous area. It was heavily guarded by the Tian clan. This was also another extremely important place for the Tian clan in addition to the Tian clan's main camp. Experts could be seen everywhere. Many arrays were constantly being built and buried. There were also many war weapons that were faintly discernible. Obviously, the Tian clan wanted to turn this sealed area into an important place. Even if the allied forces of the various clans returned, they could not attack it, let alone regain control of this sealed area. Yi Shiwen turned into an ordinary Tian clan member and walked in the sealed area. With his cultivation, naturally, no Tian clan member could recognize him. Looking from afar, in the core area of the sealed area, a huge array was constantly operating. The hexagonal star array emitted a terrifying divine light, constantly attacking a black hole. And in that black hole, there was a faintly discernible seal word. This seal word had an unparalleled powerful aura, suppressing this black hole. However, on this seal word, dense cracks began to appear, and from these cracks, there were Tian clan experts coming in and out from time to time. Suddenly, a terrifying aura burst out from these cracks. Emperor, it was the Emperor! Chapter 29:14. Even if only a little bit of the terrifying aura leaked out, it was enough to make people want to kneel down instantly. That was the suppression of a completely different level of life. An emperor was trying to break the seal. Yi Shiwen immediately realized that there was an emperor on the other side of the seal trying to come to the myriad world through this seal. If they really succeeded, then there would be a good show to watch. It's really not peaceful at all. Yi Shiwen touched his forehead and said, but his face was completely solemn. Currently, in the myriad world, the only known living emperor was Ming Di. Ming Di's ambition was not any smaller than the heavenly clan, so he could not be relied on at all. Moreover, even if Ming Di stood up, it would be useless. He was only half crippled, and could not be compared to the emperor at his peak. Most importantly, Yi Shiwen did not have a good relationship with him. Ming Di coming out was simply a disaster for him. However, although the aura of the emperor was constantly leaking out, the seal was also bursting with powerful light, constantly suppressing the aura. It's still a little bit off, but it won't be long before that lord breaks the seal. At that time, it won't be a problem for him to rule the world. I heard that there is not a single emperor in the myriad world now. It will be their time to die. Yi Shiwen was in the city, looking into the distance, but he heard voices of discussion in his ears. Many of the heavenly clan were looking in the direction of the seal with respect. Yi Shiwen's face turned cold as he listened. Although he did not know how long they were talking about, it should not be a long time. He was afraid that he did not have much time left. However, although that lord can't come over, he passed down a decree for the emperor to go to the origin place and accept the inheritance. Someone said softly, obviously receiving some news. What? The emperor is going to accept the inheritance? Isn't he going to soar to the sky and become an existence of the emperor level? Someone cried out in surprise. The origin grounds, that's a place of inheritance created by the various imperial monarchs, and there are supreme inheritances within. Many seniors have headed there before they passed away and left behind their inheritances for their descendants. It was rumored that this origin land was the origin of the heavenly race. It had the same status as the ancestral land of the human race. However, the origin land of the heavenly race was more mysterious than the ancestral land of the human race. Within the Tian clan, over the countless years, it was unknown just how many experts had appeared. Some of these experts had never left the origin land in their entire lives. They had always stayed in the origin land. This was the true foundation of the Tian clan, and they could not afford to lose it. Not to mention that many of the Tian clan experts who were about to fall had all returned to the origin land in the end. No one knew how many inheritances there were inside, and there were even inheritances from the Tian clan monarch. Among the many legends about the Tian clan, there were many examples of people who had gained enlightenment overnight and soared to great heights. Yes, the origin land is not a place that everyone can enter. It will only open once every 10,000 years. Only the most powerful geniuses are allowed to enter it. It is the root of our Tian clan. This time, it is not only the Emperor who has been summoned back. There are also several invincible geniuses on the other side of the sealed land who will also enter together. That's right. The bloodline of our clan that has been left outside has been severely suppressed by the various clans. There are no powerful figures at all. If the Emperor and I didn't get the opportunity to become an emperor, he wouldn't have a chance. However, this time, he will probably soar to the sky. Compared with others, his biggest weakness is that his cultivation is shallow. This time, he will soar to the sky. With the opportunity to become an emperor in hand, he will definitely achieve enlightenment within 100 years. With the support of an emperor, sooner or later, the heavens and myriad realms will crawl under our feet again. Yi Shiwen's expression was slightly startled. He didn't expect that he would still reach this step even though he had tried his best to destroy the opportunity of the Emperor and I. The situation that the Emperor and I was facing now was somewhat similar to his. No matter how fast his progress was, his cultivation time was too short. It was still a fatal flaw. Now, if he obtained the inheritance of the Emperor, then it was inevitable that he would become an emperor and achieve enlightenment. It was not impossible to achieve enlightenment within 100 years. This was something that Yi Shiwen absolutely could not tolerate. 100 years was too short for him. He must not give the Emperor and I a chance to succeed. Countless thoughts turned in Yi Shiwen's mind in an instant. His face shape also changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, he became a young man in a luxurious robe with an incomparably arrogant face. The powerful aura of the Tian clan also spread out from his body. He decided to disguise as a master of the Tian clan and enter the origin land. He would find the Emperor and I and kill him. At the very least, he would find the inheritance and devour it. He could not fall behind the Emperor and I. Above the sky, infinite golden light instantly scattered in all directions. A huge car rolled across the sky. It completely ignored the seal in the city and landed in the city. Everyone made way for it. They saw that the car was huge, like a huge palace. It was pulled by 9 powerful exotic beasts. Any one of them was an extremely tyrannical divine king outside. Now, they could only be used to pull the car. One could imagine how luxurious the owner of this car was. There was only an old man in plain clothes driving the car. He wore a bamboo hat on his head. No one could see what he looked like clearly. They only felt that his aura was unfathomable. On this car, there were countless beautiful women in gorgeous clothes playing. It was as if they were in a paradise on earth. Among these beautiful women, there were 3 handsome young men and women surrounded in the center. The leader was a young man in a purple robe. His purple robe was like a burning flame. His whole body seemed to be wrapped in a ball of flame. At this time, he spoke. How unlucky. I didn't expect to find Yi Shiwen when I was so interested. In the end, I didn't find him. He is not in the so-called Hidden Alliance. Yi Shiwen didn't care about it at first. But suddenly, his eyes suddenly turned sharp. I think it's hard to live up to his reputation. How famous is Yi Shiwen? His subordinates are a bunch of weak people. Only Yi Qianqian and Yi Mo have a little bit of influence. Among the 3, another young man in a golden robe said arrogantly. His eyes were like 2 big suns, burning fiercely. This was a sign of his cultivation. Tsk, how boring. I followed the master of nothingness to kill a bunch of trash. That Yi Qianqian is a little interesting. She actually has a Dao tool. But now, it has fallen into the hands of the master of nothingness. The only remaining woman in red said with a yawn. This time, the master of nothingness didn't make a wasted trip. Although he was disrupted by the martial arts sect and the heavenly court in the end, his strength has increased greatly after obtaining a Dao tool. This time, he will definitely come out on top and be invincible in the land of origin. That's not necessarily true. How can the others be ordinary? Most importantly, That rebellious emperor from the outside is not a simple person. He has the opportunity to obtain Tao. Among our generation, if there is anyone who is most likely to obtain Tao, it is definitely rebellious emperor. The young man in the purple robe said. "Tsk, what is rebellious emperor?" Those who stayed in the myriad heavens realms were suppressed. In recent years there have been no decent talent. Rebellious emperor is just a dwarf. If it wasn't for the opportunity to become an emperor, who does he think he is? How can he be compared to us? The young man in the purple robe said. The young man in the golden robe sneered. If it wasn't for the fact that all of you are absolutely forbidden to attack him, he wouldn't have been able to keep the opportunity to become an emperor. If he doesn't want to go to the land of origin, then we will teach them a lesson. That's true. Those who stayed behind are all trash. How can they be compared to us? The woman in the red robe said disdainfully. It's a pity that we didn't manage to kill Yishiwen. I heard that he has several Dao tools, especially the time robe. Back then, he killed many of our senior experts. It's such a waste to fall into the hands of a human. The young man in the purple robe sighed and said, I heard that he was comprehending Tao, so we specially rushed over from the other side of the sealed land. In the end, we were still too late. I heard that he has completed the cutting Tao and is very powerful. If there is a chance, I would like to fight with him. I think it's hard to live up to his reputation. A mere human doesn't have the bloodline of an emperor clan. How strong can he be? How can he be compared to us? He can't even win against DNI. The young man in the golden robe said coldly with an extremely arrogant expression. Whether it was Yi Shiwen or DNI, he didn't like them. In his opinion, there were no heroes in the world. Only then did the young become famous. Fortunately, they didn't come out. Otherwise, they could kill these so-called super geniuses in seconds. I say, you guys are too arrogant. A clear and cold voice sounded. The young man in the purple robe frowned slightly and snorted coldly. He turned his head and saw that a handsome young man in a luxurious robe had appeared in the carriage. Who are you? The two flames in the eyes of the young man in the golden robe were almost materialized. This was a kind of supreme magic power of the heavenly eyes. It was extremely powerful. It could only be practiced under the forging of the mystical flame. The person who will teach you how to be a person. The young man grinned. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? Teaching us how to be a person? That's ridiculous. Are you looking for death? The young man in the golden robe burst into laughter, as if he had heard the funniest joke of the century. I think you dare to be so arrogant because you don't know who we are. Your names? Is it necessary to know? You're just some losers who are about to be defeated by me. Yi Shiwen grinned and smiled happily. Chapter 29:15. Teach us how to be human? Good. I've never heard of anyone wanting to teach me how to be human in my life. The young man in the golden robe was so angry that he laughed when he heard Yi Shiwen's words. He was completely furious. He had always been arrogant. Even super geniuses like DNI and Yi Shiwen, who had been famous for a long time, he did not take them seriously. In his opinion, they were just monkeys calling themselves kings when there were no tigers in the mountains. It was nothing at all. However, someone actually dared to say that he wanted to teach them how to be human at this time. Wasn't that the same as bumping into the muzzle of his gun? Ha, how funny! The young man in the purple robe was rolling on the ground with laughter, as if he had heard the funniest joke. It seems like our deterrence is not enough. These people from the garrison faction actually dare to be so arrogant. The woman in the red robe was also so angry that she laughed. Obviously, she was completely infuriated by Yi Shiwen's words. Deterrence? What deterrence do you think you guys have? Yi Shiwen grinned and said, if it's that so-called master of nothingness, then it's more like it. I can still practice my skills. How dare you guys say that the garrison faction is trash? Yi Shiwen had completely put himself in the consciousness of a heavenly race expert. His eyes were shining with a cold light that was even colder than the coldest place in the universe. What did he just hear? These guys had just attacked the Hidden Alliance, and even let a guy called Master of Nothingness snatch the devil worship. Yi Shiwen had specially refined it for Yi Qianqian to protect herself. Now, he was told that something had happened and it had been taken away. From their words, it seemed like the Hidden Alliance had also suffered heavy losses. Although they were chased away by the martial sect and the heavenly court in the end, such losses were completely imaginable. All these years, he had been focusing on cutting Dao. It seemed like some people thought that he was easy to bully, especially these young people from the heavenly race who came from the other side of the seal. They had no intention of taking him seriously at all. However, Yi Shiwen did not want to reveal his identity yet, but he could not let these guys go. He could only pretend to be an indignant expert from the garrison faction. Trash is trash. I said that you are all trash. So what? The golden-robed young man looked at Yi Shiwen coldly. The scorching flame in his eyes seemed to burn the heavens. Let me see how capable the retention sect is. How dare you say such shameless words? You deserve to die 10,000 times over. You must die immediately. The golden-robed young man suddenly stood up and attacked Yi Shiwen with his palm. As the palm descended, a huge image appeared in the sky. It was the Myriad Worlds diagram. He had completely integrated the Myriad Worlds diagram into his martial art. It was obviously related to the Myriad Worlds dynasty. This huge scroll instantly turned into billowing waves and crashed down towards Yi Shiwen. It directly crushed down towards Yi Shiwen. At this moment, Yi Shiwen made his move. A mass of thunder power appeared in his hand and turned into a monstrous giant hand. It tore the heaven and earth apart, and even the Myriad Worlds diagram was torn into pieces. Yi Shiwen had even defeated the Dao tool of the Myriad Worlds diagram, let alone a type of magical martial arts. It was nothing. However, Yi Shiwen could not use martial arts like the 6 paths of reincarnation fist that he was famous for. Otherwise, he would be easily recognized. In this case, the strength that he could exert would be somewhat affected. However, if it was just to deal with these guys, it was more than enough. This mass of thunder power instantly turned into a huge sea, and the counterattack broke out in an instant. Then, it fell towards the golden-robed young man fiercely. Rumble! The speed of these thunder powers was too fast. In an instant, the golden-robed young man was shrouded in it, and then endless explosions occurred. The entire cart instantly turned into a mass of flying ash. Even though the cart itself was made of extremely precious and rare divine materials, it was nothing in front of Yi Shiwen's thunder power. The thunder character charm was faintly discernible on Yi Shiwen's body, concealing all the other auras of Yi Shiwen. At this moment, it seemed as if he was the reincarnation of the most powerful Thunder Emperor in the world. He stood towering in the sky like an ancient divine mountain. Ah ah ah! A series of roars came from the mouth of the golden-robed young man. After the countless thunder powers dissipated, his figure was revealed. In an instant, only an incomparably embarrassing appearance could be seen, and he no longer had the arrogant and domineering appearance from before. At this time, the others had already hidden far away, not daring to approach. Even the celestial race knew what it meant to seek luck and avoid calamity. Obviously, the people who were fighting here were not people they could afford to provoke. In the face of such peerless villains, it was better to stay as far away as possible. Who the hell are they? How dare they make a move here? Someone exclaimed. This sealed land was such an important place, and they actually dared to make a move here. It was simply audacious. One must know that living here, they didn't even dare to speak loudly, because there were too many masters stationed here. A little carelessness could cause them to offend a terrifying existence that they couldn't afford to provoke. At that time, it would be really too late to cry even if they wanted to. I know those three. Aren't they called the Immortal Dawn Three Friends? If these three people join forces, unless the Emperor Lord personally takes action, I'm afraid that they will be invincible. That's right. However, these three people are also very annoying. They are targeting our faction everywhere. They think that our ancestors were simply afraid and didn't participate in the final battle, so they weren't sealed inside. Someone mentioned the fierce conflict between the two factions of the celestial race, the Seal faction and the celestial race. The Seal faction thought that they had built a base here, and finally persisted until they were rescued. It could be said that they had worked hard and made great contributions. However, the sealed and exiled Seal faction didn't think so. In their opinion, those people were cowards who didn't participate in the final battle. Otherwise, how could they not be sealed inside? However, in general, the Seal faction still had the absolute upper hand. They completely dominated in all aspects of strength. Therefore, the Seal faction had to swallow their anger for so many years. Now that they saw someone targeting the people of the Seal faction, many people of the Seal faction didn't say anything on the surface, but secretly cheered. Finally, someone came out to teach these guys a lesson. Who asked them to be so arrogant? If they weren't so arrogant, the Seal faction wouldn't have been forced to this point. You, no matter who you are, you will die today. The golden-robed young man said coldly, none of you are allowed to interfere. Today I will kill him thoroughly. Because of the words of the golden-robed young man, the mysterious coachman, and the other two members of the Xian Xia Three Friends suddenly stopped their actions. Originally, they planned to directly attack and get rid of Yi Shiwen. However, at this time, the golden-robed young man was still angry. They didn't want to provoke him at this time. Moreover, this degree of attack couldn't hurt them. So, they let the golden-robed young man deal with it. You are really going to die. The golden-robed young man suddenly grabbed with his palm. Countless spirit energies condensed and pushed in the air. In an instant, with a rumbling sound, countless spirit energies were grabbed and turned into the myriad worlds diagram. The momentum was magnificent. In an instant, it seemed as if all the worlds in the heavens were manifested in it. It was a conscious projection. It was very terrifying. Compared to the previous attack, the eyes of the golden-robed young man erupted with endless flames. These flames stained the myriad worlds diagram. Suddenly, many worlds in the myriad worlds diagram turned into a sea of fire. This sea of fire condensed together and directly suppressed Yi Shiwen. Many people of the Tian clan exclaimed and fled into the distance. Although this sea of fire was in the myriad worlds diagram, this myriad worlds diagram was not the real myriad worlds diagram. It was only condensed from spirit energies. Even if it was just the aftermath of the fire, it was enough to completely burn them to death. Only this method? You want to deal with me? Naive. Yi Shiwen sneered. A circle of divine radiance appeared behind him. Then, a huge mass of thunder power manifested in his hand. In an instant, this ball of lightning power transformed into a blue qilin. Even the scales on its body were completely outlined. It was vivid and lifelike. Impressively, it was the qilin that had protected the Thunder Emperor's talisman. It was just that this qilin was outlined by Yi Shiwen's memory. It was many times stronger than the Thunder qilin from before. This blue Thunder qilin grew bigger and bigger in Yi Shiwen's hand. It rose against the wind and roared towards the sky. Then, it instantly flew out. An endless sea of thunder melted under the feet of the Thunder qilin, forming an absolute thunder domain. Every time its 4 feet stepped down, it could form circles of thunder and lightning ripples. The energy in these ripples could even completely destroy a star. It was incomparably terrifying. Boom! This Thunder qilin directly rushed into the myriad worlds diagram in the sea of fire. The fierce collision between the two sides broke out in an instant. Then, a terrifying scene happened. Yi Shiwen's Thunder qilin almost instantly broke through the countless worlds formed by the myriad worlds diagram. The flames in the countless worlds had always been famous for their explosive power. But now they encountered even more explosive and more powerful thunder power. They were instantly annihilated. In the blink of an eye, the thunder Qilin directly broke through the myriad worlds diagram and rushed towards the golden-robed young man, opening its bloody mouth. Chapter 29:16. That lightning Qilin roared and began to run in the sky. It was like an immemorial divine mountain was running. Even the sky was shaking, and sand and stones were sent flying. All the defenses of the young man in the golden robe were broken. The thunder Qilin opened its bloody mouth and swallowed the young man in the golden robe. Boom! After the entire thunder Qilin swallowed the golden-robed young man, it instantly exploded. It was like a huge nuclear bomb had exploded. However, its power was even more terrifying. It directly annihilated everything, annihilated the laws, annihilated the chaos, and everything ceased to exist. Everything returned to nothingness. The endless energy waves dissipated, revealing the figure of the young man in the golden robe. He had already been blown beyond recognition. Even if all the defensive martial instruments were used, he was not directly blown into pieces. Instead, he was blown into a bloody mess. There was no longer the elegant appearance he had before. He looked like a stray dog, extremely embarrassed. "Damn it, how dare you hurt me!" The young man in the golden robe's face was livid and extremely hideous. Under the contrast of the golden blood, he looked extremely terrifying. All the aura on his body was constantly galloping, like thousands of horses galloping. All the blood seemed to have been cast back to his body by a spell of time reversal. In just an instant, he had almost recovered. However, his face was even more unsightly. His eyes were like two flames, staring at Yi Shiwen. "I must tear you into pieces. Who dares to act so presumptuously in this sealed place?" An old and cold voice came from afar. The young man in the golden robe's expression suddenly stagnated. He seemed to have heard who the person was, and could not help but feel a little depressed. "Get lost, or I'll kill you too," Yi Shiwen said in an incomparably cold tone. "Who the hell is this person? I have seen many arrogant and despotic people in my life, but I have never heard of anyone who dares to be so arrogant and despotic in this place. Doesn't he know how many experts are stationed here?" Someone exclaimed in a low voice. Yi Shiwen's domineering words had almost scared the shit out of him. "No matter how strong he is, I'm afraid that he won't have a good ending after offending these elders. Are all the members of the Garrison faction so arrogant and ignorant? Don't talk about our Garrison faction. Speaking of which, I've never seen him before. The world is so big. It's not strange to have a few hidden experts. I just don't know which sect he's from. He's so arrogant and domineering. He should be from the Imperial dynasty. His master might be one of the Imperial monarchs. To the Tian clan, being born into a dynasty was equivalent to having the inheritance of an emperor in the myriad heavens. It was just that almost all of the celestial race's imperial monarchs established their own dynasties and passed down their legacies, while almost all of the other worlds passed down their legacies through sections. This was the biggest difference. Those golden-robed youths were almost at the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Yi Shiwen's strength also seemed to be strong, not weak. Such an existence, even if he was not a direct disciple of the emperor, he should be a member of the empire. It was impossible for ordinary legacies to cultivate such a person. "Good, you've got guts. I'd like to see who exactly you are. I'll capture you first and get your sect to come and get you." Yi Shiwen only heard an ice-cold voice, followed by a big hand grabbing out of the void. It was carrying a supreme sealing talisman, and directly grabbed towards Yi Shiwen. It was actually grabbing Yi Shiwen with its bare hands. It was obvious that it did not put Yi Shiwen in its eyes, or in other words, it did not think that Yi Shiwen might resist. The golden-robed young man's eyes flashed with hatred. He hadn't taken his revenge yet, but he didn't dare to go against the elder's will. He knew very well how terrifying the old fellows in this sealed area were. Even with his background, he didn't want to offend these old fellows here. These old guys had strange tempers. They were strong and had profound skills. Most importantly, they had connections throughout the Tian clan. No one was willing to offend these guys. "You're lucky." He looked at Yi Shiwen with hatred. In his opinion, being captured by the elders was a good thing. At least he would not be tortured to death. "You dare to capture me? Do you think you're worthy?" Yi Shiwen sneered. He had no scruples at all. In fact, with his current cultivation, the only people who could make him scruple were emperors. Other than emperors, there was no one else who could make him feel scruples. Thunder power erupted from Yi Shiwen's body and turned into scriptures. These scriptures exuded a strange divine light and were all describing the great way of thunder. Although the experts of the Tian clan had retreated far away, their eyesight was not bad. They could all see very clearly, especially some of them who cultivated the power of thunder. When they saw the scriptures on Yi Shiwen's body, their eyes almost popped out. These scriptures were so profound that they could not understand them at all. It was like a fantasy story, as if they were reading a book from the heavens. With their cultivation, they had such a feeling at this moment. One could imagine the shock in their hearts. Who the hell is this person? How can his cultivation of thunder be so tyrannical? Many people were guessing. Many experts of the Tian clan who cultivated the law of thunder flashed in their minds, but it seemed that they could not connect this domineering young man in front of them. They were completely different. Moreover, compared to those people in the legends, this person in front of them was even stronger and more terrifying. "You want to capture me?" The lightning on Yi Shiwen's body turned into a long sword, and a shocking sword stabbed out. In an instant, the giant hand that was trying to grab him was completely destroyed. Immediately after, the giant's sword did not lose any of its momentum and slashed through the void, revealing a figure within. It was an ancient old man, wearing clothes that were fashionable many years ago, and his body carried a bit of a decadent and ancient aura. He sat cross-legged on a cloud bed in the void, chanting the divine text. At this moment, when he saw the space in front of him suddenly broken, he was instantly furious. He was exposed. Most importantly, someone dared to fight back. This was simply intolerable. "You dare to fight back?" The ancient old man was instantly furious. Then, Yi Shiwen grabbed the endless thunder energy in his hand, and in an instant, it turned into a battle spear. The veins on his arm bulged, and he threw it directly. Whoosh! This thunder spear directly tore through the endless roar of thunder, and directly blasted into the space with lightning speed. The ancient old man did not have time to react at all, and was directly hit by the thunder spear. His whole body was penetrated, and then directly knocked back. Even the small world where he was in collapsed under the thunder spear, and instantly disappeared without a trace. The scene was silent. Everyone could not help but swallow a mouthful of saliva, and looked at Yi Shiwen. "This is fake, right? This is 2F** King Fierce." Everyone was a little dumbfounded, and they were shocked on the spot. Although they felt that they had overestimated Yi Shiwen, they did not expect that they still underestimated Yi Shiwen. Not only did he have the guts to attack, but his attack was so sharp and terrifying. It was simply the most terrifying thunder tyrant in the legends. With one blow, an elder who survived from ancient times was blasted away, and almost beheaded. Is he not afraid of punishment? Even if he had the support of the Empire behind him, he might not be able to handle such a huge matter by causing trouble here. If he made a bigger fuss, he might even alert the lords on the other side of the seal who were trying to break the seal. By then, no one would be able to protect them. Well, now that no one is disturbing us, where were we just now? Just now I said that I would teach you a good lesson, Yi Shiwen said with a cold smile. The young man in the golden robe quickly reacted. After experiencing the initial shock, A fierce expression quickly climbed up his face. Good, good, very good. It couldn't be better without the interference of those old guys. I will definitely break every bone in your body. I want you to understand who you have offended. The young man in the golden robe said with a loud laugh, and his laughter was incomparably happy. Whoosh! In an instant, the young man in the golden robe directly attacked. He did not intend to wait for Yi Shiwen to attack. From just now until now, he had been in a disadvantageous position, constantly being suppressed by Yi Shiwen. He wanted to completely regain the upper hand. He directly blasted a palm towards Yi Shiwen. In the blink of an eye, the palm slapped out a billowing flame towards Yi Shiwen. He directly used all kinds of magical powers in the sky, not giving Yi Shiwen any chance to catch his breath. I have already said that it's just an insignificant skill. In front of my Thunder Dao, everything is fleeting. Yi Shiwen roared, as if he was a cultivator who was extremely obsessed with the law of thunder. His entire person instantly rushed over like a ball of lightning. The sound of wind and thunder was torn apart, and his entire person was like a ball of lightning, directly rushing into the rolling fire. The flames that were enough to refine the stars and penetrate the world could not burn his body at all. Even the power of thunder used to protect his body had no way to break through. Yi Shiwen's understanding of the law of thunder was completely revealed, and it was strong to an unimaginable extent. Bang! Those flames were once again broken by Yi Shiwen. He was like a monster in human skin, a humanoid dinosaur, directly rushing in front of the young man in the golden robe. Then, a slap suddenly slapped over. Pa! An extremely loud slap came, and then the body of the young man in the golden robe spun rapidly like a top, and fell heavily to the ground. Chapter 29:17. One blow, just one blow, and the golden-robed youth was instantly slapped away by Yi Shiwen like a dead dog. It was not a normal defeat, but a direct slap. It was the most humiliating way of defeat. Everyone who thought that they could see a fierce battle was completely dumbfounded. The difference was too big. The golden-robed youth was famous for reminiscing about the past, the Celestial Clan's 3 friends. Although his reputation outside was still a little small, it was only a matter of time before he became famous. But now, he was slapped to the ground like a dead dog. How would he have the face to go out and fight for hegemony in the future? All his defenses, all his laws, had completely collapsed. He was completely vulnerable. Ah! The golden-robed youth roared in a low voice, like a wounded beast that was growling in a low voice. Half of his body had cracks, and his body was almost torn apart by Yi Shiwen in midair. He screamed and roared at the same time. He was just about to stand up, but his neck was directly grabbed by a hand, like a rooster being strangled. There was a terrifying force all over his body that suppressed his spiritual power and cultivation. At this time, he was like an ordinary person. He felt that it was getting more and more difficult to breathe, and his face was extremely pale. His whole body was twitching, but he could not break Yi Shiwen's seal. He even began to roll his eyes like a little chick being grabbed. Everyone had the same feeling in their hearts. This Yi Shiwen was humiliating him, humiliating the dignified Celestial Clan's 3 friends. Although they did not know where he came from, this was a little too fierce. Everyone could see that Yi Shiwen was humiliating the golden-robed youth, and Yi Shiwen did not care, because he was humiliating him. Thinking that Yi Qianqian might be injured by them, and that many people from the Hidden Alliance would be injured, Yi Shiwen could not control the murderous intent in his heart. Bang! While everyone was still immersed in this shock, they saw Yi Shiwen ruthlessly throw the golden-robed youth to the ground, and then directly stepped on his face. You are courting death. Even if you are from the dynasty, I can't save you. The purple-robed youth's face was extremely ugly. Although the person being trampled was not him, the Celestial Clan's 3 friends were of the same branch. At this time, it was as if his face was being stepped on, and it was burning. At the same time, he was extremely shocked. Others might not know, but as one of the celestial clan's 3 friends, how could he not know how terrifying this golden-robed youth was? Even he might not be able to win easily, and such a person was played by this guy in front of him like a toy. He had no strength to fight back at all. Just like this, it was enough to show how terrifying this guy was. I don't need anyone to save me, but you better think clearly about who is going to save you today. Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. Even though they did not say a word, but there was I, and I ye the I friends, ye friend and I of brothers. I suddenly, the purple-robed youth and the red-robed woman moved at the same time. The 2 of them broke through the sky and attacked Yi Shiwen from both sides. The fate of the golden-robed young man made it clear to them that they had no chance of winning one-on-one. They had no idea where this monster had come from, but he was so terrifying that he was almost on par with the Lord of Nothingness. Whoosh! Whoosh! The 2 of them attacked from both sides, but Yi Shiwen was not in a hurry at all. He did not look worried at all. The attacks of the 2 were already in front of him, and at this moment Yi Shiwen suddenly moved. He directly rushed towards the purple-robed youth on the left. There were no extra movements. It was just a simple punch that contained the power of endless thunder. In an instant it broke through everything. It was a big move, a heavy sword without a sharp edge. Countless thunder laws appeared at this moment, wrapping around the fist. Then, it rotated violently, forming a terrifying whirlwind, and suddenly rushed in front of the purple-robed youth. The martial arts torrent that the purple-robed youth directly blasted out was broken the moment it touched Yi Shiwen's thunder fist. It was useless at all. Then, it was directly blasted in the chest. Bang! The purple-robed young man let out a blood-curdling screech and was instantly sent flying. Even the sky was blasted away. He was sent flying thousands of miles away, tens of thousands of miles away. Die! A delicate shout came from behind Yi Shiwen's head. He saw that the red-robed woman's hand turned into a palm of shocking light. There was the power of thunder shining in her hand. It turned out to be the same as Yi Shiwen. They both cultivated the power of thunder. At this time, it was completely released, and it slapped towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! This blow directly blasted on Yi Shiwen's body. 2 different powers of thunder collided, and a shocking light burst out. In an instant, the whole world seemed to be filled with the power of thunder. The thunder laws engulfed all other laws. No one could see what was happening. They only heard a muffled sound that directly hit the hearts of everyone. Then, a figure directly flew out. It was none other than the red-robed woman, and she spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. There was a palm print on her chest, and her body was pierced through. This palm was extremely powerful, and this palm was extremely terrifying. At this time, the endless power of thunder had just dissipated. In this power of thunder, Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back, like a tyrant in the power of thunder. What immortal dawn 3 friends! Just SOSO. With such a level, how dare you laugh at our garrison faction? Yi Shiwen said softly, just at a level that everyone could hear. He was now watching the show, and he didn't care if things got out of hand. He couldn't wait for the garrison faction and the seal faction to directly fight on the spot. It would be better if they fought to the death. Hearing Yi Shiwen's words, sure enough, the expressions of the people of the Heavenly Clan were completely different. The garrison faction naturally felt extremely happy. They let the seal faction talk about what happened in the past all day long, and constantly suppressed their living space by relying on their superior cultivation. Now they were getting their retribution. Yi Shiwen wanted to tell them that the garrison faction was not useless. They also had such a great master, and it was definitely not just an idea alone. The complexions of the members of the seal faction had turned extremely ugly. Yi Shiwen had successfully transformed the grudge between him and the 3 friends of the Immortal Dawn sect into a grudge between the Guardian faction and the Seal faction. Even if it didn't erupt immediately, The seeds that had been planted would eventually sprout one day. At this time, the immortal Dawn three friends had already been seriously injured by him, especially the golden-robed young man, who was still under his feet, unable to move at all. Even when he was about to die, he probably wouldn't know how he had offended such a terrifying master. If he was given a chance to choose again, he definitely wouldn't have chosen to show off here. He would have directly passed through the seal. Why did he have to show off here? Suddenly, a strange change occurred. A terrifying storm tore through the boundless wind and directly formed behind Yi Shiwen's head. Then, it rushed towards Yi Shiwen to kill him. I almost forgot about your existence, but what use do you think it is? Yi Shiwen sneered, and turned around to meet this surprise attack with his palm. Bang! A violent explosion erupted in an instant, and a figure stumbled out of the void. Wasn't that the coachman who was driving the carriage just now? His strength could also be said to be mysterious, and he definitely had the cultivation of a peak quasi-emperor. Although Yi Shiwen didn't know why a person with such cultivation was driving the carriage, there must be a special reason. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care about this. He directly covered it with his palm. The figure seemed to have turned into the wind, and was slapped by Yi Shiwen's palm. He couldn't maintain this posture on the spot, and directly fell out, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He was not a celestial race, but a special race in the heavens. He was a half-spirit, and belonged to the wind attribute. He could naturally turn into a wind-like existence, and no one would be able to detect him at all. This was why he could suddenly rush in front of Yi Shiwen. However, at this time, after being seriously injured, he couldn't maintain his transformation. This is a bit interesting magical power. Yi Shiwen smiled slightly, and suddenly turned into a huge thunder qilin, and rushed forward. Although this coachman was mysterious, his combat strength was not as good as the golden-robed youth, and he was directly swallowed on the spot. Rumble! The thunder qilin instantly exploded, and directly blew the coachman into pieces. Bone fragments flew everywhere, and his flesh and blood collapsed. He couldn't be more dead. Murder! Murder! Many people exclaimed. Previously, no matter how Yi Shiwen taught them, he had not killed anyone. Now, he directly had the intention to kill. This time, both sides would definitely not leave the matter at that. The Xian Xia three friends also had their own forces behind them. Was there really going to be a collision at the imperial level? The confrontation between ordinary disciples was not enough to cause the two imperial dynasties to fight, but at the level of the Xian Xia three friends, they belonged to the big shots in the imperial dynasties, and they could not be compared at all. Humph! Yi Shiwen snorted softly, and then felt that there were more and more powerful auras around him. Obviously, there were powerful masters coming. The battle just now should have alarmed the elders stationed here. Although he was not afraid, now was obviously not the time for a big battle. He had to rush to the origin place where the other side of the seal was to stop the Emperor and I. He couldn't cause unnecessary trouble here. Thinking of this, he directly grabbed the three Celestial Dawn Immortal Trio, who had already been beaten half to death, in his hand. Then, he suddenly took a step forward, turned into a ball of lightning, and instantly passed through the crack in the seal. Chapter 29:18. Yi Shiwen instantly passed through the seal. The moment he passed through the seal, a monstrous force descended from the sky from the seal, trying to suppress him. However, another terrifying force surrounded him, resisting the suppression of the seal. A powerful and terrifying force, the power of the Emperor of the Sky Clan, came from an unknown place. It was resisting the seal and even destroying it. When Yi Shiwen appeared, he was already in eternal darkness. He came to the edge of a huge continent. This continent was endless. Even the heaven realm among the myriad heavens was not as big as 1% of this continent. At the edge of this continent was endless chaos. It was hundreds or even thousands of times more violent than any chaos that Yi Shiwen had seen before. As everyone knew, the endless world existed in the endless chaos. Just like the continent floating on the sea, the closer the chaos was to the world, the more stable it would be because of the existence of the rules and the world. The farther away from the stable world, the more violent the chaos was. It was like the deep sea far away from the continent, violent and boundless. Judging from the situation of this chaos, it was definitely far away from the myriad heavens. If there was no seal, Yi Shiwen would not even be able to sense the existence of the myriad heavens. Creating such a continent amidst the violent chaos and being able to maintain it was definitely not something that an ordinary person could do. In fact, it was not something that a single imperial monarch could do. It would only be possible if several imperial monarchs joined forces. At the edge of this continent, there were powerful laws and energy protecting this continent from being swallowed by the endless chaos. This was also the great power that only an emperor could achieve. This was the place where the Sky Clan resided at the other end of the sealed land. Yi Shiwen could also feel a powerful force rushing from the continent, then rushing towards the seal, shaking the seal. Yi Shiwen waved his hand and released the Immortal Dawn three friends. This is... The young man in the golden robe opened his eyes reluctantly and found that he did not know when he had returned to the other end of the sealed land. It made him feel as if he was dreaming. What happened just now was just a nightmare that would be fine once he woke up. But when he saw Yi Shiwen, he completely reacted. This was not a nightmare at all, but reality. You damned garrison faction, you still dare to come here. The golden-robed young man cursed, but he was out of breath. He was so badly injured that he didn't even have the strength to speak. "Humph!" Yi Shiwen coldly snorted. "You should also be allowed to enter the Origin Land. Tell me, what kind of qualifications do you need to enter the Origin Land? You are not from the Tian clan." The golden-robed youth suddenly opened his eyes wide. Although he was seriously injured, he was not stupid. He immediately understood the reason why Yi Shiwen asked this question. Yi Shiwen would have been invited to the Origin Land if he was a member of the Heaven race. The Land of Origin was simply out of reach for the ordinary heavenly race. They didn't dare to dream about it. However, it wouldn't be difficult for Yi Shiwen to obtain a quota with his strength. The only possibility was that he wasn't a heavenly race. So, he didn't dare to expose himself in front of everyone. "Yes, it seems that you haven't become a fool yet," Yi Shiwen said with a smile, not denying it. An outsider like you actually dares to barge into my Tian clan's land and even dare to covet the Origin Land. You are crazy." The purple-robed youth spat out a mouthful of blood and spoke with great difficulty. "Crazy? He maybe." Yi Shiwen smiled slightly. As the saying goes, if you don't go crazy, you can't live. Yi Shiwen's tone was incomparably relaxed. "Don't even think about it. We won't tell you." The red-robed woman gritted her teeth and looked at Yi Shiwen. She said angrily, "It doesn't matter. Anyway, this kind of condition is not a secret. You should know after asking. Since you are not willing to say it, then it is of no value." Yi Shiwen's expression slowly became cold. "You will die. That is not the myriad heavens. There are emperor lords of my clan guarding there. You actually want to sneak in. You are courting death." The purple-robed youth also looked at Yi Shiwen in a daze, because he didn't expect that Yi Shiwen would be so crazy to enter the Origin Land of the heavenly race. It was as if he didn't dare to imagine himself touching the ancestral land of the human race. Emperor lords, yes, but there is no other choice. Yi Shiwen naturally also knew that even if DNI achieved Dao, it would definitely not be comparable to those old emperor lords of the heavenly race. However, those old emperor lords would not be able to pass this seal in a short time. On the contrary, DNI could achieve Dao in the myriad heavens. The direct threat was even more terrifying than the other emperor lords of the heavenly race. "I came this time to kill DNI. Don't you hate him to death?" Now it's just right. I can also help you to fulfill an unfulfilled wish. No matter how big the grudge between us is, it is also an internal matter of our heavenly race. Since when do we need an outsider to help us take revenge? You won't succeed. The golden-robed youth's expression changed slightly. Even if he didn't like D&I, he was also very clear about what D&I meant to the entire heavenly race at this stage. The heavenly race in the myriad heavens was no longer as powerful as it was at the beginning. The battlefront of both sides slowly stabilized. They lacked the ability to make a decisive decision, and there was even a possibility of a reversal. If something went wrong, the heavenly race would be banished and sealed again. The consequences were not something they could bear. In order to break through the sealed land, the heavenly race had worked hard for tens of thousands of years before they succeeded. Next time, it would not be so easy and simple. The allied forces of the various races must be on guard. It's none of your business whether we succeed or not. However, if we need a certificate to enter the origin land, then the most important thing must be with you. Anyway, it can't run away, Yi Shiwen said confidently. I'll tell you. The golden-robed youth suddenly said coldly. We have a token on us. Only through that token can we enter the origin land. It will only be issued when the origin land is open. When it is over, it will be taken back. You actually told him about this? The purple-robed youth's eyes widened. In his eyes, there was incomparable hatred, as if he had seen a traitor. Do you think I'm a traitor? The golden-robed youth laughed loudly. I'm dead, but I want to see him die. He's crazy. If he dares to enter the origin land, only death awaits him. Let alone an outsider like him, even we will die if we dare to enter the forbidden land. If I don't see the hope of his death, I won't be reconciled. I won't be reconciled. I actually have such a day. Ha ha ha, it's ridiculous. As he laughed, the golden-robed youth suddenly coughed up a large amount of blood, and blood kept spurting out. The purple-robed youth's eyes were incomparably desolate. Yes, the Celestial Dawn three friends were considered to be powerful in the heavenly race. Since when did they have to rely on killing their enemy like this? The man in front of them was really too terrifying. Except for the Emperor, they could not imagine who else could kill him. Even the Lord of Nothingness and a few other people would not be able to do so. The golden-robed youth was not afraid that Yi Shiwen would not go. As long as he wanted to kill the NID, then he must enter the origin land. Yi Shiwen did not care. The golden-robed youth was honest, and it saved him a lot of trouble. Then, Yi Shiwen asked him about the location of the origin land. Then, he threw them into the demon flag, and fed them to the demon race. I'll be watching from below, waiting to see how you die. Ha ha ha, we'll meet again in the Yellow Springs soon. Yi Shiwen stepped on an electric light, and submerged into that huge continent. The entire continent was incomparably prosperous, and there were countless heavenly race living on it. Those heavenly race that had come to the myriad heavens were actually only a part of it. It was just that compared to the heavenly race that had already left, the heavenly race that remained on this continent was generally much weaker. After all, the heavenly race was still in the stage of conquering the world. Even if these civilians migrated over, they could be killed by the battle at any time. The origin land of the heavenly race was the most important and extremely profound place on this continent. It should be said that the entire continent was constructed with the origin land as the core. In the past, the heavenly race was defeated and exiled. It was with the origin land as the core that they were able to survive in the endless chaos. After so many years, they slowly expanded the continent. Under normal circumstances, ordinary heavenly race was not allowed to approach the origin land. Only when it was opened at a fixed time would a group of heroes go there to find opportunities and obtain inheritance. The strength of the heavenly race that was sealed and exiled was far better than the heavenly race that stayed behind. Not only because the main elite experts were sealed and exiled, but most importantly, the entire continent was actually guarded by several emperor lords. Those heavenly race that were sealed and exiled could still receive the guidance of the emperor lords. Although they lacked resources, the speed of their growth was far better than the heavenly race that was suppressed outside. The origin land of the heavenly race was immersed in a gray mist. Usually it was blocked by a maze. Only at specific times would a passage be open. All the geniuses that received the message would gather together. Yi Shiwen faintly saw that in the void, there were several tyrannical auras guarding the entrance of the passage. It was to prevent random people from breaking in, and also to prevent some extremely dangerous things from the origin land from breaking out and harming the continent. Chapter 29:19. Yi Shiwen stepped on a ball of lightning and rushed directly into the passage. He was so fast that the tyrannical auras couldn't catch him. It seemed that he had disappeared in a flash. "Who is this?" an ancient being asked. "I don't know, but he has an entry certificate. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to enter the origin ground and would be expelled. He should be an arrogant junior," someone explained. "Nowadays, the juniors are more arrogant and despotic than the previous one." "Ha ha ha, what's so strange about that? We weren't much better than them in the past. At that time, we were also unconvinced of those authorities. We wanted to create our own era." "That's right. That was a very long time ago." At this point, there was silence again. No one spoke again. These old antiques fell into cultivation again. Cultivation had almost become their instinct. They had to cultivate all the time. Yi Shiwen rushed into the land of origin, and immediately felt an invisible coercion crushing down on him. This side of the world had faintly formed a repulsive force against him. He frowned slightly. His disguise could deceive the celestial race, but it couldn't deceive this world. The laws of this world would automatically reject people who were not from the celestial race. Of course, it didn't pose any fatal threat to him. However, his strength was suppressed. This was an unavoidable problem. There was no origin of the celestial race in his body. This was also inevitable. This was because he had cultivated the ruler's sword technique. Otherwise, the rejection would be more serious. He could deceive the outside continent with the aura of the ruler's sword technique, but he couldn't deceive the origin ground of the celestial race. This side of the world was too dangerous. Even the god burial star sea, where emperors had fallen, didn't feel so dangerous. Yi Shiwen went all the way forward. The origin ground was very big. He could only search slowly. He looked for some adventures while looking for the whereabouts of the rebellious emperor. However, according to the young man in the golden robe, the rebellious emperor was likely to receive the inheritance in the center of the origin ground. This was the most likely because the inheritance he was going to receive would not be an ordinary inheritance. It would be the inheritance of an emperor. Not only him, there were also some extremely powerful geniuses from the Tian clan who would go and accept the inheritance. If they could be chosen, then they would be able to ascend to the heavens in a single step. This also included the Lord of Nothingness who had just dealt a heavy blow to the Secret Alliance. Therefore, Yi Shiwen wasn't in a hurry. Suddenly, the world in front of him began to distort. Ferocious ancient Qi suddenly condensed, and with a deafening roar, the crowd saw a huge ferocious beast taking shape in the void. This huge beast was a huge wolf. Its huge body was like an ancient sacred mountain, and every strand of hair on its body was as thick as a huge ancient tree. Its entire body was like a huge mountain, and it had a great deterrent force. His fangs were like two sharp swords, tearing the sky apart as he pounced towards Yi Shiwen. How could this be? Why would I encounter this beast ancestor? A shout came from beside Yi Shiwen. In this area, Yi Shiwen wasn't the only one. There were many people nearby. They were all elites among the elites of the Tian clan, and geniuses among geniuses. However, when they saw this huge wolf, they almost fainted. Back then, it was said that the beast was about to become a monarch. Later on, after it was killed by a monarch of my Tian clan, it was placed in the origin grounds. Who would have thought that after so many years, not only was his primordial spirit not destroyed, it had even recovered to this extent? Someone exclaimed in a low voice, recognizing the identity of this huge wolf. It was also an existence that commanded an area in the past. It could even threaten an emperor, and an emperor had to personally come out to kill it. Many people wailed, "Why did we encounter this beast right at the beginning? Didn't they say that the area near the origin grounds passage was not dangerous?" An existence of this level was obviously not something that could be encountered under normal circumstances. They really didn't know whether they were lucky or unlucky. Otherwise, how could they encounter this beast? Let's fight it out with him. He wants to swallow us all and refine our flesh and blood to grow new flesh and blood. Someone roared. They had opened their heaven eyes and could clearly see that this giant wolf was only left with an incomparably huge skeleton. As for the flesh and blood on its body, it was clearly just an illusory body of energy and not real flesh and blood. However, if they were swallowed, the situation would be completely different. They could definitely regrow their flesh and blood. In that case, the consequences were simply unimaginable. Did the emperor of the Tian clan have to intervene in the competition of the origin grounds again? At that time, they would inevitably be labeled as incompetent. Moreover, this origin grounds was very mysterious. Even the emperor of the Tian clan couldn't casually interfere in this area. They could only occasionally use their great power to interfere. These experts all roared and attacked. These people were the elites of the Tian clan. Although they might not be comparable to the immortal Dawn Three Friends, their strength was still above the quasi-emperor realm. When they joined hands, they were still mighty and extremely terrifying. However, when these attacks fell on the body of the huge wolf, they were useless. They were directly bounced off. And at this moment, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky and directly turned into a huge thunder chilin. It suddenly hit the body of the huge wolf. Rumble! Countless lightning blessings transformed into scriptures and spread out in all directions. Everyone seemed to see this thunder scripture directly turn into a world. That was the center of the entire universe. In an instant, a huge bloody hole appeared on the body of the giant wolf. Blood sprayed out and it screamed again and again. Everyone's gaze fell on Yi Shiwen. They were a little confused. Who was this person? He was too strong. Their joint attack couldn't hurt this huge wolf at all. They had no choice but to ask the emperor to intervene. However, this man in the thunder had seriously injured the huge wolf with just one attack. Their eyes flashed with extreme shock. Many people started to have thoughts in their hearts, especially since Yi Shiwen was so powerful. This made them want to rely on him. After all, this place was so dangerous. If they could become the follower of a peerless powerhouse, then their chances of survival would be greatly increased. However, those famous peerless experts all had a large number of followers. There was simply no room for them to join. However, this person in front of them was different. It was obvious that he was alone, and he didn't have any followers. Roar! That giant wolf howled. Instantly, the earth trembled. Boundless origin chi swept out. Back then, it was able to force a monarch to personally come out and kill it. This was enough to prove how terrifying it was. Based on Yi Shiwen's many years of experience, those who could be personally killed by an emperor were only the giant beast ancestor, the ghost emperor who had not yet achieved enlightenment, and a few others. The rest didn't even have the chance to have such honor. His movement was extremely fast. In an instant, he had already rushed in front of Yi Shiwen. His eyes were incomparably fierce. He looked at Yi Shiwen with an ominous glint in his eyes. "Ha ha, good beast. You came at the right time. I happen to lack a suitable weapon. I will accept your fangs." Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. He didn't retreat. Instead, He directly rushed forward and blasted a punch wrapped in the endless power of thunder. Bang! Yi Shiwen's punch landed on the body of the huge wolf. The giant wolf let out a blood-curdling screech as his entire head exploded on the spot. His body of flesh and blood, which was formed from energy, immediately disintegrated, revealing a mass of white bones within. That was where his foundation was located. Even if he was killed by an emperor, countless years had passed. His flesh and blood body had decayed, but the bones in his body hadn't decayed. One could imagine how strong it was. However, before everyone could react, they saw Yi Shiwen taking a step forward. He directly rushed forward, grabbed the two fangs of the huge wolf with both hands, and suddenly exerted force. Everyone only heard a loud bang, and then they only saw that the giant wolf's fangs were abruptly broken. The huge wolf screamed again and kept retreating. His eyes were also filled with extreme horror when he looked at Yi Shiwen. Then, he frantically fled backward. He had already seen that the guy in front of him was too terrifying. He could completely suppress him with just his flesh. If he was still in his peak state, he naturally wouldn't be afraid to fight. Unfortunately, he wasn't in his peak state at all. It was fine to scare ordinary experts of the Heavenly Clan. Now that he encountered Yi Shiwen, he completely met an iron plate. He didn't dare to hope to get back at Yi Shiwen. He quickly fled into the distance. "Don't go, stay here." Yi Shiwen formed a big hand and grabbed towards the huge wolf. The giant wolf was instantly caught in his hand. Countless lightning bolts turned into chains and imprisoned him. No matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't escape. On the contrary, the more he struggled, the more his flesh and blood were blasted by the power of the lightning. Blood and flesh flew everywhere. Roar, roar, roar. The huge wolf kept roaring, trying to break free. "It's useless. With your current strength, you won't be able to break free." Yi Shiwen faintly smiled, and started to circulate the mnemonic formula that he had inherited from the Tool Emperor. The two huge fangs were refined at an astonishing speed in his hands. They quickly transformed into two silver-white long blades, and flickered with the power of thunder. Chapter 29:20. Yi Shiwen was now almost standing at the peak of the Quasi-Emperor. There was no difficulty in refining the divine tool. It was just a matter of minutes. There was no difficulty at all. Roar! This roaring giant wolf was constantly struggling in the lightning net, but it could not break free from Yi Shiwen's lightning net. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the giant wolf's body exploded in the air. It was blasted into pieces by the lightning net on the spot. So scary. Everyone finally came back to their senses after Yi Shiwen's figure disappeared in front of them. Who the hell is this person? Why haven't I seen him before? I don't know either. Could it be a hidden senior? Recently, many people have received invitations. There are many qualified people. There may be hidden peak quasi-emperors. This time, it is different. There is an Emperor Lord personally taking action. It is not necessarily only the rebellious Emperor who can get the Emperor Lord's inheritance. Many people were discussing, but there was still no way to see Yi Shiwen's identity. Yi Shiwen had become one of the most dreadful experts under the sovereign Emperor realm in their hearts after he had launched a single attack. Yi Shiwen walked in the land of origin. The surrounding space was distorting all the time. It was manifesting all the time. It was hard to tell how many times heavier the principles here were compared to the outside world. The deeper he went, the more he could feel this strong pressure. It made it difficult for people to breathe, but it was also because of this that it could hone everyone's strength. However, Yi Shiwen did not care at all. Although he did not show it, there was the existence of the Tao tool in his body. No matter how heavy the laws were, it could not affect his actions. For him, this was a kind of training and enlightenment. In the land of origin, the most ancient laws of the Tian clan manifested. The more Yi Shiwen walked in, the more things he saw, and the more he could understand the origin of the Tian clan. There were many ancient books and records in the origin land. Most of them had been eroded by the cold wind. However, some of them had still remained. Yi Shiwen had come to understand many secrets of the heavenly race for the first time through these things. These were things that could not be known from the outside. The deeper he went, the worse the environment inside. In many places, even a quasi-emperor would die if they were not careful. A year later, a saying instantly spread throughout the entire land of origin. A portion of the Pill Emperor's body had reappeared in this origin ground. When the news first came out, no one believed it. But soon, the news spread like wildfire. Especially regarding the cause and effect of this matter, they quickly spread it out. It turned out that this part of his body was cut off by the Tian clan's emperor lord when he was fighting with him, and sealed it until now. Only now did he finally grind away the essence, energy, and spirit of the Dan Emperor in his body and finally reappear in the world. Many people became excited when they heard this news. One must know that Dan Di, in order to attain the Tao, had refined his own body into a supreme medicine. A part of his body was a supreme medicine, and after swallowing it, his cultivation would explosively increase. From then on, it would advance by leaps and bounds. It was not a problem at all. The place where the Pill Emperor's body was located was an inheritance altar. The monarch who had sealed him back then had left behind a huge seal here. In order to obtain that part of the Pill Emperor's body, one must become the successor of that monarch. In other words, one must be favored by that monarch. How could everyone not be excited? Especially since these were two great benefits. One could obtain a part of the Pill Emperor's body. After swallowing it, one's cultivation would explosively increase. Moreover, one could become the successor of that supreme monarch. More and more people rushed to the inheritance altar as these rumors spread. Even Yi Shiwen was no exception. If he could obtain a part of the Pill Emperor's body, he could use it to cultivate for countless years. This would allow him to truly step into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. He would not miss such an opportunity. It was simply a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. One must know that there were many inheritances in the land of origin that were in a situation where no one had inherited them. However, even if one obtained an inheritance, it would generally take a long time to refine it. It was impossible to have such an immediate effect like this. Not to mention, a medicinal pellet that was effective for Yi Shiwen now was not something that could be found under ordinary circumstances. In just a few days, Yi Shiwen arrived near the inheritance altar according to the rumors. He saw that there were huge hurricanes blowing near the inheritance altar. Any one of these hurricanes could blow away the bones and flesh of a divine king. It seemed to be blocking everyone's way. This wind is so strange. Could it be the legendary netherworld ghost wind? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and thought for a moment. Countless information flashed through his mind. Soon, he identified that this was the legendary netherworld ghost wind. This kind of wind did not seem to be formed naturally. It could only be produced in the darkest places. Now that there were so many of them, it was abnormal no matter how one looked at it. Around this netherworld ghost wind, Yi Shiwen clearly felt that many tyrannical figures were watching. Obviously, many people also wanted to obtain the monarch's inheritance inside. However, they did not want to rush in rashly. There is a pillar inside. There is a switch on the pillar? Yi Shiwen's eyes were like torches. He instantly saw a pillar in the depths of the netherworld ghost wind. There was a switch on the pillar. Soon, Yi Shiwen heard from the conversations of those people. Just as Yi Shiwen had guessed, the switch on the pillar with simple patterns was the switch to turn off the netherworld ghost wind. If there was no switch to turn off, even a peak quasi-emperor would not be able to rush in. Although this pillar was within the netherworld ghost wind, it was only at the outermost periphery. It was still possible to rush in for a short time. At least, Yi Shiwen was very confident. If there is a switch, there should be a key, Yi Shiwen immediately judged. Soon, the matter about the key was also found out by the resourceful people. There were a total of 7 keys. Only when 7 keys were gathered could it be possible to turn off the netherworld ghost wind. These keys were scattered all over the land of origin. Soon, the first key appeared. For a while, a reign of terror was set off. Everyone began to fight crazily. Although everyone knew that a key could not turn on the switch and turn off the netherworld ghost wind, only with a key in hand would one have the right to speak. Only then would one have the possibility to enter the inheritance altar. Everyone understood this principle. If one wanted to enter the inheritance altar, one must be qualified. And these keys were the qualifications. In order to compete for this qualification, everyone launched an astonishing fight. Although they were all from the celestial race, their fight was no worse than that of the outsiders. For a while, blood flowed like a river. There were mountains of corpses and seas of blood everywhere. Yi Shiwen did not participate in this matter because there was no need at all. Anyway, no matter who obtained the key in the end, they would come to the inheritance altar. At that time, he could just snatch all of them. Moreover, he hoped that these celestial race people would suffer heavy casualties. It would reduce a great deal of pressure on the Allied forces. Since this inheritance was so important, Yi Shiwen not only had to do it for himself, but also for the Allied forces. Otherwise, the celestial race might cast an incomparably powerful expert in a short time. Since the news of the first key had spread, the rest of the keys soon appeared one after another. This made the competition even more intense. It was like a flesh mill. A large number of experts and managers fell. Soon, these 7 keys had owners. However, there were not 7 owners. In fact, there were only 3 people. Within the celestial race, especially within the Seal faction, they were also well-known existences. Yi Shiwen heard one of the names, and his eyes burst with a shocking killing intent. That person was the Lord of Nothingness. Enemies were bound to meet. Although the origin source grounds were huge, there were only a few people who could catch the eye of people of their level. In addition to the Lord of Nothingness, there were 2 other terrifying existences in the celestial race. They were the Lord of Sky Origin and the Lord of 10,000 Treasures. The reputation of these 2 people was not inferior to that of the Lord of Nothingness. In fact, they were even better. Many people knew that there was no hope. However, they were not willing to give up. One after another, they came to the inheritance altar. Perhaps there would be more changes. They might still have a chance. Soon, the first owner of the 7 keys arrived. It was the Lord of 10,000 Treasures. The Lord of 10,000 Treasures was a young man with a handsome face. His whole body was shining with the aura of treasures. It had almost materialized. It had transformed into his domain and his divine kingdom. It was protecting him at all times. No one could sneak attack him. The Lord of 10,000 Treasures. He is more powerful than I imagined. It is said that he has countless magic treasures. That's why he is called the Lord of 10,000 Treasures. I don't know if it's true or not. Someone said in a low voice. He has 3 keys. He has the most keys among the 3 people. I have arrived. Are the 2 friends not willing to come out and meet me? The Lord of 10,000 Treasures stood with his hands clasped behind his back. There was an extremely confident look on his face. Good. What a good Lord of 10,000 Treasures! A young man in a magnificent robe appeared in front of everyone. He was stepping on a rainbow light. He was the second of the 3 people to arrive. He was the Lord of Sky Origin. Since you're all here, then it's just as well. All of you hand over your keys. I alone am enough to obtain the Emperor Monarch's inheritance. An unruly young man appeared in front of everyone while stepping on a streak of light. Chapter 29-21. Master of Nothingness, do you have a death wish? The Master of Sky Origin stared coldly at the arrogant man. That's right. How dare you say such a thing? Are you planning to take the Emperor Lord's inheritance for yourself? The Master of Million Treasures looked at the Master of Nothingness coldly. Although you have quite a reputation, you don't stand a chance against any of us. Are you trying to force us to join forces to kill you first? Join forces? Ha ha ha. Do you think I'm afraid of you joining forces? The Master of Nothingness laughed loudly as if he did not care about the two of them joining forces. Trash on top of trash is still trash. Do you think I'm afraid? Good, good, good. I think you've really lost your mind. The Master of Million Treasures sneered. In that case, Master of Sky Origin, let's join forces and kill him first. We'll let him know that he doesn't have the final say in this world. All right, that's exactly what I'm thinking. The Master of Sky Origin let out a long roar and took the initiative to attack. A strong martial arts will swept out and locked onto the Master of Nothingness. There was a hint of anger on his face. The Master of Nothingness's words were clearly disregarding him. This was intolerable. Strike of Sky Origin. The Master of Sky Origin roared and slammed his palm down on the Master of Nothingness. In an instant, the sky and earth rapidly collapsed. Is this all you've got? The Lord of Nothingness sneered. His body instantly turned into a boundless radiance. Everything in the world was turned into nothingness. This was the power of his nomological law of nothingness, turning everything in the world into nothingness. The Master of Sky Origin's attack was drowned out by the law of nothingness before it could land on him. It did not hurt him at all. Don't be too arrogant. At that moment, the Master of Million Treasures roared. His entire body exuded an earth-shattering treasure aura. It surrounded his body and formed an earth-shattering hurricane. In the midst of this boundless hurricane, the Master of Million Treasures instantly turned into 4 figures. Each figure had an extremely powerful aura that could kill all enemies in an instant. Moreover, the combined might of these 4 people was simply unimaginable. Master of Myriad Treasures, is this the Myriad Treasures clone that you relied on to become famous? I heard that they're all clones that you refined using ancient artifacts. They have 90% of your original strength and are very powerful. It's almost equivalent to facing 4 of you, the Lord of Nothingness said slowly. It's too late for you to react now. Under my Myriad Treasures clone, no one in the same realm is a match for me. I didn't want to use it so soon, but since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. The 4 Myriad Treasures masters spoke at the same time, and their voices seemed to resound from all directions. Reacted. Ha 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 ha, you think too highly of yourself. Invincible in the same realm, I will break your myth today. The Lord of Nothingness laughed heartily and charged forward. He actually fought the 4 Lords of 10,000 Treasures at the same time. 5 silhouettes clashed fiercely in the sky. Each of them was an existence that looked down on the heavens and earth. Each of them possessed terrifying strength that ordinary people wouldn't even dare to imagine. How could this be? Many people couldn't help but cry out in surprise. We haven't even entered, and such a fierce battle has already erupted. If this continues, what will happen? 2 of them, no, 3 of them are peerless heroes. They all have trump cards. If this continues, I think it will take decades before there is a clear winner. Everyone discussed the matter. However, in their opinion, the outcome of the battle between the 3 of them wouldn't be decided so easily. Although the Lord of Nothingness didn't know why he provoked the other 2, he definitely had his reasons and confidence after thinking about it. This made the matter even more puzzling and confusing. At the side, the Lord of Sky Origin was happy to see the Master of Myriad Treasures and the Lord of Nothingness fight to the death. He even wanted to watch a good show. However, he quickly realized that something was wrong. The power of the Master of Myriad Treasures clone was undeniable. It was extremely terrifying and powerful. If the Lord of Sky Origin were to be besieged by the 4 Master of Myriad Treasures, he would probably be defeated quickly if he didn't show his true strength. This was no longer a matter of 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1. Moreover, they were all clones of the same person. Their minds were connected, so their power was multiplied. However, in the face of such attacks, the Lord of Nothingness didn't panic at all. He didn't show any signs of weakness either. He even acted as if he didn't care at all. A casual defense was enough to block the Master of Myriad Treasures' attack. Even when the Master of Myriad Treasures' attack landed on him, it was like a clay ox entering the sea, disappearing without a trace. Something was wrong. The Master of Myriad Treasures quickly realized this. Even if the Lord of Nothingness had a way to deal with the four of them, it was impossible for him to block all of his attacks so easily. If he could deal with them so easily, he wouldn't have been famous for so many years. How could this be? 4 times the attack. The 4 Masters of Myriad Treasures roared at the same time. Boundless radiance of treasures erupted, sweeping into a shocking attack that landed on the Lord of Nothingness. The Lord of Nothingness's expression didn't change. He simply opened up his domain of nothingness and completely blocked all of the attack. He didn't even pant. That's impossible. No quasi-emperor would be able to withstand my attack so easily, unless you've attained the Tao. The Master of Myriad Treasures' expression finally changed. The fact that his probing attack had been blocked by the Lord of Nothingness was too shocking for him. Is this all you've got? Master of Myriad Treasures, you've really disappointed me. Really? The Lord of Nothingness revealed a disdainful expression. Stop joking. Who do you think you are? How dare you say such things? The Master of Myriad Treasures roared and increased his attack. All sorts of terrifying attacks rained down on the Lord of Sky Origin. On the other side, the Master of Sky Origin joined the battle. Lord of Nothingness, I don't care what reason you have. I'll just kill you directly. That'll solve everything. The Master of Sky Origin joined the battle. For a moment, the 6 of them were fighting each other. It was a complete mess. This was especially so after the Master of Sky Origin joined the battle. The attacks that the Lord of Nothingness faced became much stronger. Even the Lord of Nothingness could not block the attacks as easily as before. Die, Lord of Nothingness! A powerful radiance of treasures erupted from the Master of Myriad Treasures' body. Countless magic treasures manifested and continuously attacked the Lord of Nothingness. That's all you got? I'm really disappointed. The Lord of Nothingness stopped all of the attacks. It's all up to me now, Master of Myriad Treasures. You claim to have collected all the magic treasures in this world. I'd like to see if you have any of them. The Lord of Nothingness suddenly stretched out his hand. In his hand, a huge warship began to grow larger and larger. It expanded with the wind, and the howls of demons could be heard everywhere. What's that? The Master of Myriad Treasures suddenly widened his eyes. He felt an unprecedented pressure from the huge warship. That's a Tao artifact. He finally reacted and understood why the Lord of Nothingness was so confident that he could stop the 2 of them. It turned out that the real key was waiting for them here. He actually had a Tao artifact. For experts of their level, the difference in their skills was really very small. This was because they had truly reached the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Therefore, the Lord of Myriad Treasures had tried his best to develop a doppelganger that could have 90% of his skills. Although there was no further improvement in his cultivation, his combat power had increased by a great deal. In addition to the increase in combat power brought about by this martial technique, the most obvious improvement was the magic artifact. That was especially true if he could get his hands on a Tao artifact. Then, the situation would be completely different. Although there were many Tao artifacts in the Sky Race and many of them were in the hands of people who were much weaker than them, they were the legitimate inheritors of the Tao artifact. Moreover, they were of the same race. Therefore, they could not rob them. Otherwise, they would be boycotted by the entire Sky Race. Even the Emperor of the Sky race might come forward to kill them. That was because it was possible for these imperial monarchs to pass down their Tao artifact. If everyone plotted to snatch their Tao artifacts after they died and bullied their legacies, they would not be willing to accept it even if they died. This kind of behavior was challenging the bottom line of the various imperial monarchs. Who would dare to provoke those emperor unless they were also an emperor? If he was also an emperor, he would not need to use such a despicable method to obtain a Tao artifact. Therefore, he did not think about this at all. Now, he finally realized it, but it was too late. The huge devil warship directly rushed towards him. Go! The master of myriad treasures roared, and the doppelgangers blocked in front of him. Bang! 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 Each of the master of myriad treasures' doppelgangers had consumed a lot of divine materials and even smelted many ancient magic treasures. However, at this moment, in front of the huge devil warship, they were so fragile. Even though they were incomplete Tao artifacts, they were still Tao artifacts. Especially in the hands of a powerful expert like the Master of Nothingness, they could exert amazing power. The Master of Myriad Treasures and the Master of Sky Origin were blasted away on the spot. Their bodies were almost smashed into pieces. They spat out blood and hit the ground. The Master of Nothingness laughed and said proudly, "See? You are so stupid. If only you had obediently handed over the keys from the beginning. That would have been great." "Yeah, if only you had handed over the keys." A clear voice came from behind him. Chapter 29-22. The Lord of Nothingness was still immersed in his complacency. At their level, there wasn't much difference between them, and it was possible for either of them to win or lose. However, things were different now that he had a Tao tool. Originally, there was not much difference in their strength. Now, he immediately gained the upper hand and completed a magnificent transformation. With this giant devil warship, his strength would leap to become one of the top experts in the world. He was confident that he could defeat Great Freedom, who had been touted as the strongest expert in the world. Wasn't it because he had the Dark Bodhi Divine Hand? What was so great about that? However, now that Great Freedom had been killed, there was no way for him to prove that he was stronger than Great Freedom. After all, he was already dead. At their level, it was impossible for their martial arts to advance further. If they advanced further, they would become Emperor-level experts. Therefore, no one could prove that they were stronger than a dead person. The only way was to find that person called Yi Shiwen and kill him. That way, he would naturally become the strongest expert in the world. Unfortunately, he didn't come across that arrogant human. How dare he claim to be the strongest expert in the world? It was only because there was no tiger in the mountain that the monkey was the king. This was his biggest regret. However, it wasn't that he didn't gain anything from this trip. He had obtained a Tao tool, which was an unexpected harvest. Tao artifacts were not like divine artifacts. There were only so many of them in total. This was because there were only so many imperial emperors in the world. Every Tao artifact had its own history and glorious war history. He had learned about the giant devil warship before. It was a Tao tool of the devil race. After the devil race was destroyed, the giant devil warship went missing. Even the celestial race couldn't find it. In the end, it was in the hands of a woman who had just reached the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. It was a pity that he still couldn't completely refine the giant devil warship. There seemed to be a force that was preventing him from refining it. He guessed that it might be the tool spirit. However, it was hidden in the deepest part of the giant devil warship. Although it didn't hinder him from using it, he couldn't completely control it. This was a huge regret. However, this wasn't a problem. It was just a matter of time before the tool spirit and the like could be completely solved. "Yes, it would be great if you all hand over the key." A clear voice came from behind him. "Who are you?" He turned around and saw a young man in his 20s. His entire body was surging with the power of lightning. If he closed his eyes, he would have thought that he was a human-shaped lightning. His expression was a little ugly. He had just defeated 2 opponents and was in high spirits, but someone actually appeared, and it was someone who completely disdained him. "The person who took your key," Yi Shiwen slightly sneered, his expression somewhat cold. This fellow in front of him was the damned Lord of Nothingness. He actually dared to appear in front of him after seizing the demonic battleship. He was really courting death. Good, 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 another one has come to seek death. The Lord of Nothingness laughed heartily. He was in high spirits, but his eyes were deathly still as he looked at Yi Shiwen. Die. The Lord of Nothingness instantly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. That terrifying power was released in an instant. It almost tore the entire plane into pieces as it rushed towards Yi Shiwen's head. Yi Shiwen didn't move at all. He let those terrifying attacks sweep over and roar out, completely ignoring them. Ha ha ha, are you scared out of your wits? You're really courting death. The Lord of Nothingness sneered and continued to attack. Suddenly Yi Shiwen moved. In an instant, countless power of lightning exploded around him. In an instant, all of them swept out. Then, all of the Lord of Nothingness's defenses were blocked, as if everything had come to a standstill. All of the attacks stopped in midair. They were stopped by the power of lightning that erupted from Yi Shiwen's body. At this moment, he could even dominate everything in the world. He was the master of the world. Is this all you've got? Yi Shiwen sneered and pointed his finger. Sky-severing finger. Yi Shiwen's finger cut off the power of nothingness that erupted from the Lord of Nothingness's body. He was thoroughly killed. What? How is this possible? The Lord of Nothingness was taken aback. His eyes widened and he almost couldn't believe his own eyes. He didn't hold back in this attack. It could be said that he had used all of his strength. He wanted to let this guy who dared to provoke him know how powerful he was. In the end, it was easily broken by Yi Shiwen. How could he not be surprised? Impossible, who the hell are you? The Lord of Nothingness took a few steps back and then forced himself to calm down. He stared at Yi Shiwen and asked. In his mind, he thought of many top-notch experts who had been famous for many years. However, none of them could be compared to the current Yi Shiwen. In other words, none of them could coincide with Yi Shiwen's impression. Humph, someone who wants your life, Yi Shiwen shouted coldly. He took a step forward and moved instantly. Behind him, the power of lightning formed a pair of incomparably huge thunder wings. He flapped his wings and flew up. His demon wings were spread out, but they were wrapped in the power of lightning. No one could see through his disguise at all. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen instantly tore apart the space and appeared in front of the Lord of Nothingness. Thunder, come! Yi Shiwen shouted and grabbed a thunder spear from the void. He suddenly threw it directly at the Lord of Nothingness. Damn it, just because of your attack! The Lord of Nothingness roared again and again. All the power in his body erupted in an instant, forming a domain of nothingness. When Yi Shiwen's thunder spear blasted into the domain of nothingness, it was as if it had entered a quagmire. Its movement slowed down, and it was gradually sinking. I don't care who you are. No one has ever broken my domain of nothingness. Do you think you can defeat me with just you? The Lord of Nothingness laughed loudly. When he saw that the thunder spear had been blocked, he immediately became happy. Is that so? Isn't it a little too early for you to be happy now? Yi Shiwen looked at him and sneered. However, the thunder spear suddenly erupted with a burst of astonishing seven-colored flowing light. In an instant, it was as if a long river of time had manifested, and all the power of time was instilled into it. The thunder spear that seemed to have fallen into a quagmire regained its vitality in an instant and directly pierced through the domain of nothingness. Bang! The domain of nothingness was like a mirror. It directly shattered on the spot, turning into pieces of space fragments. How is this possible? The Lord of Nothingness was unprepared. He never thought that someone's attack could break through his domain of nothingness. His nihility domain wasn't like many other defensive god arts that were as solid as a rock. The true profundity of the nihility domain was that it could turn all attacks into nothingness. This way, it wouldn't be able to hurt him. Naturally, it could also have a defensive effect. However, if someone was not affected by the power of nothingness, his domain of nothingness was extremely fragile. It was almost immediately broken by the thunder spear. Poochie! The thunder spear directly pierced through the chest of the Lord of Nothingness and was carried out. Then, it crashed into the ground. Boom! A huge pit was instantly formed in the ground. Cracks spread out in all directions like a spider web. The terrifying power set off thousands of layers of soil and rubble. He was pierced in an instant and severely injured in an instant. The Sky Origin Master and the Master of 10,000 Treasures, who were watching from the side, were dumbfounded. Although they were unwilling to accept defeat at the hands of the Lord of Nothingness, there was nothing more depressing than losing to a Tao artifact. However, the strength of the Lord of Nothingness was unquestionable. Although the power of a Tao artifact was quite great in the hands of an ordinary god, that was all. The more tyrannical an expert was, the greater the power that a Tao artifact could display. Only the legendary Emperor Lords could display 100% of the power of a Tao artifact. The premise for a Tao tool to be able to contend against an Emperor Lord was that the user had to be an Emperor Lord. Only then could it display such extreme power. But even so, the Lord of Nothingness and Yi Shiwen had only exchanged a few moves, and yet he was defeated. It was simply unbelievable. The Lord of Nothingness roared continuously. He grabbed the thunder spear and pulled it out. Blood spurted out like a pillar, and the spear was thrown to the side. Damn it, I will make sure you die without a burial place. The Lord of Nothingness's face was ashen. All the blood vessels in his body were bulging, and he looked like an injured beast. His scarlet eyes stared at Yi Shiwen. Opposite him, Yi Shiwen was expressionless. He just crossed his arms in midair with a cold look in his eyes. Is this all you've got? Lord of Nothingness, what a great name, but this is all you've got. Yi Shiwen's sneer was like a sharp sword that pierced into the chest of the Lord of Nothingness. He felt like he had been played and mocked. He was incomparably angry. I will make you pay for this. The Lord of Nothingness roared. All the power in his body was surging like thousands of galloping horses. The injury on his chest was also recovering at an astonishing speed. The power of nothingness condensed around him and turned into a huge domain. He suddenly flipped his hand, and the giant demon ship in his hand grew bigger and bigger. Then, it crashed towards Yi Shiwen at an astonishing speed. Die! However, the huge devil ship arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. But, something unexpected happened. It seemed as if the huge devil ship had broken free from some shackles when it arrived in front of Yi Shiwen. It then flew into Yi Shiwen's body, and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 29-23. How is this possible? Everyone was stunned. The Lord of Nothingness and the other two weren't the only ones who were shocked. No one had expected such a scene. Everyone had wanted to see whether Yi Shiwen could resist the attack of the giant devil ship. However, they hadn't expected that it wouldn't just be a matter of whether he could resist or not. He had also taken away the giant devil ship. What's going on? No one had expected that Yi Shiwen would be able to take away the giant devil ship in one move. What kind of technique had he used? If this technique was so heaven-defying, would they still be able to fight against him in the future? Wouldn't their divine tool be taken away in one move? Then, they wouldn't be able to fight against him anymore. Impossible! The Lord of Nothingness found this the most difficult to accept. He was about to go crazy. He had painstakingly seized the giant devil ship. He had been constantly refining it during this period of time. However, he hadn't been able to refine it completely. He hadn't expected that Yi Shiwen would take it away in one move. Unless he was the original owner of the ship, he wouldn't have been able to do it so easily. However, that was impossible. The original owner of the giant devil ship was naturally the devil race. The subsequent owner should be that human woman that he had met. How could this guy have taken it away so easily? However, he didn't know that his imagination was already very close to the truth. Yi Shiwen wasn't the owner of the giant devil ship. However, his true spirit was still present when he was refining it. The reason why the Lord of Nothingness hadn't been able to refine the giant devil ship quickly wasn't only because the giant devil ship was a Tao tool, but also because Yi Shiwen's true spirit was resisting it. Therefore, Yi Shiwen had been able to take away the giant devil ship so easily. Humph! You only have this kind of technique. You can only rely on the giant devil ship. You're nothing without it, Yi Shiwen said coldly. Hand over the key obediently, and I'll grant you a quick death. Otherwise, you'll regret it. You think you can do that? The Lord of Nothingness stood up and roared. You dare to talk to me like that? Are you courting death? You two, hurry up and help. He's obviously planning to monopolize the key. You two will definitely be kicked out by him. Only by cooperating with me now can you have a chance to kill him. Although the Lord of Nothingness was ostentatious, he wasn't stupid. The fellow in front of him was so strong that he didn't seem like an ordinary creature. He even suspected that the primordial spirit of an Emperor Lord was playing a prank on him. If he didn't join forces, it would be impossible for him to contend against him alone. Only by borrowing the strength of the other two would it be possible. The Master of Sky Origin and the Master of Myriad Treasures surrounded them. Although the three of them had been fighting, they had formed an alliance in an instant for the sake of the key. They had all seen how Yi Shiwen had abused the Lord of Nothingness just now. If they didn't want to be abused by Yi Shiwen later, it was necessary for them to join forces unless they planned to withdraw from the fight for the key. Sky Origin Strike. The Master of Sky Origin didn't say anything. He immediately attacked Yi Shiwen. In an instant, everything between the heavens and the earth disappeared. All that was left was this frighteningly deadly attack. With a loud bang, it attacked Yi Shiwen from the sky. This strike of his directly borrowed the power of heaven and earth. It was also an extremely brilliant martial art. This martial art is a bit interesting. Yi Shiwen burst into laughter and blasted a punch. His body suddenly moved forward, and an innumerable amount of magic power surged out. At this moment, he didn't use any amazing martial arts. He only used the most simple and plain fist technique. However, this kind of basic fist technique in Yi Shiwen's hands had earth-shattering power. It was unimaginable. Bang! Yi Shiwen's fist fiercely hit the Sky Origin strike and directly pierced through it. Yi Shiwen's tyrannical physical body was perfectly displayed at this moment. It should be known that he was able to defeat and kill a peak quasi-emperor just by relying on the strength of his physical body. One could imagine that he had really reached a kind of extreme. Unless it was an Emperor Lord, it would be difficult to find an existence that could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. What kind of fist technique is this? The Master of Sky Origin took a few steps back and dissipated Yi Shiwen's attack. There was a look of disbelief on his face. At this moment, he completely understood why the Master of Nothingness had suffered such a big loss. This guy in front of him was too terrifying. It didn't seem like the strength that a normal person possessed. Stop talking nonsense and hand over the key. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. Yi Shiwen released all the martial arts cultivation in his body. Instantly, his spiritual power exploded, causing a fierce resonance between heaven and earth. His martial arts cultivation had really reached a level that could shock the heavens and the earth. Yi Shiwen took a step forward, and suddenly threw another punch towards the Lord of Sky Origin. The Master of Sky Origin's face also became serious. Does this person really think that I'm a soft persimmon? He immediately blasted another attack at Yi Shiwen. It was the same set of martial arts, but the power was unexpectedly increased by a level. At this moment, he was the only emperor in the world. He was going to punish Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's expression didn't change. His hands suddenly shook, and suddenly, golden light filled the sky. Then, he directly tore apart the attack of the Master of Sky Origin. Even the vitality and the power of heaven were torn apart. The Master of Sky Origin didn't panic. He didn't know how many fierce battles he had experienced in his life. This was nothing to him. He directly attacked Yi Shiwen again. However, Yi Shiwen's reaction was faster. He directly tore apart the attack, and then rushed in front of the Master of Sky Origin. How can he be so fast? The Master of Sky Origin felt that the surrounding air had become stagnant. He couldn't even breathe. It was incomparably difficult. Yi Shiwen's speed was too fast. He was so fast that he felt that he couldn't even increase his martial arts cultivation. Don't be arrogant. At this moment, the Master of 10,000 Treasures, who had been preparing for a long time, suddenly rushed out. He stepped on countless magic treasures and suddenly blasted at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen directly blasted a punch at the Master of Sky Origin. There was no time to stop. Bang! The Master of Sky Origin didn't have time to react. He was blasted away on the spot. His body almost collapsed. Puff! The Master of Sky Origin fell to the ground. He stared at Yi Shiwen in disbelief. This attack made him feel as if he had been hit by the Master of Nothingness's demonic worship. The feeling of his internal organs being bombarded almost made him faint. It was too terrifying. It was too frightening. On the other side, the Master of 10,000 Treasures' attack had already arrived. It instantly broke through Yi Shiwen's thunder domain and bombarded. Don't overdo it! The Master of 10,000 Treasures roared. Yi Shiwen had dared to completely ignore him and attack the Master of Sky Origin first. This made him feel that he was being looked down upon. Humph! Yi Shiwen raised his other hand and transformed it into a big hand. Then, it suddenly grasped out like a curtain of the sky. Yi Shiwen's big hand turned into a big net. The Master of 10,000 Treasures' countless magic treasures were blocked outside. It was like a clay ox entering the sea. All of them disappeared without a trace. That's all, Yi Shiwen sneered. He turned around and was about to launch a surprise attack. The Master of 10,000 Treasures roared. 3 figures instantly appeared around him. 10,000 Treasures doppelgangers. The 3 doppelgangers and the Master of 10,000 Treasures suddenly surrounded Yi Shiwen and fiercely attacked him. For a moment the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. The world shook violently. It was an extremely shocking scene. Everyone was dumbfounded. This scene was like the scene when the Master of 10,000 Treasures besieged the Master of Nothingness. The only difference was that the Master of Nothingness had been replaced by Yi Shiwen. Moreover, Yi Shiwen was even more ferocious. Even when facing the attacks of 4 Master of 10,000 Treasures, Yi Shiwen still dared to attack him. When facing the Master of Nothingness, he could only barely defend himself. It was a completely different concept. Again, thunder! Yi Shiwen roared. In an instant, the endless thunder energy in the world gathered towards him. With his body as the core, it began to condense. Then, it instantly turned into an endless sea of thunder. Walla-la-la-la! Countless thunder and lightning swept out at this moment. Countless thunder and lightning formed a lightning chain, and bombarded towards the Master of 10,000 Treasures. Puff! The Master of 10,000 Treasures groaned. His whole body was hit by a thunder kylon that emerged from the sea of thunder. His chest was immediately blown into a bloody mess. His whole body was sent flying. His master of 10,000 treasures doppelgangers weren't any better. They were also sent flying. The experts of the Celestial clan who were watching the battle retreated far away. They held their breath and concentrated their minds. They felt that everything was too scary. Yi Shiwen was much more ferocious than the Master of Nothingness. The Master of Nothingness had used the devil worship to destroy the Master of 10,000 treasures, doppelgangers. However, Yi Shiwen didn't need a Dao tool to achieve this step. Everyone could see who was stronger and who was weaker at a glance. There was no need to think too much. Everyone's eyes widened. They wanted to see how far Yi Shiwen could go. They didn't know that Yi Shiwen's real identity was a human. Therefore, their hearts were neutral at this time. They didn't have any mentality of favoring the Master of Nothingness and the others. In any case, they were all geniuses of the Celestial clan. So, it didn't matter. Again, Yi Shiwen roared. Endless thunder power was driven by him again. It suddenly fell down and bombarded the empty space beside him. Just when everyone thought that he had missed, a figure fell out of it. Chapter 29-24. If it wasn't the Lord of Nothingness, then who could it be? The Lord of Nothingness took a direct hit from Yi Shiwen's thunderbolt. His entire body was scorched black. Although it seemed like an ordinary move, the Lord of Nothingness was severely injured. Damn it, how can he be so powerful? The Lord of Nothingness roared. The previous attack had completely electrocuted most of the vibrant cells in his body into charcoal. It was unknown how much martial power it would take to regenerate them. It could be said that his vitality had been greatly damaged. One must know that as a peak quasi-emperor, his cells had a lot of vitality. Even if one of his cells was placed at a temperature of several thousand degrees below zero, or even in a star like the Sun, he would still be able to survive. However, he had been completely injured by someone's thunderbolt. You're only SOSO? Yi Shiwen directly attacked. The void in his hands was constantly changing. He simply blasted a punch, but it was enough to strangle everything. Whoever was involved in it would all die. There was no other possibility. The Lord of Nothingness was forced to retreat again and again. As he retreated, he quickly recovered from his injuries. If this continued, he would probably be forced to death by Yi Shiwen on the spot. Don't be too proud. The Lord of Sky Origin had already rushed over. It was unknown when a long saber had appeared in his hand. He suddenly slashed at Yi Shiwen. This long blade had a peerlessly sharp blade light. Although it was not a Dao artifact, it was also forged from divine materials that could be used to forge Dao artifact. To a certain extent, it also possessed some of the power of a Dao artifact. At the very least, its toughness was no less than that of a Dao artifact. Humph! 2 long sabers appeared in Yi Shiwen's hands. They were refined from the fangs of the giant wolf. He immediately slashed at the treasured saber of the Lord of Sky Origin. Bang! 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 The 3 treasured sabers splashed in the sky with terrifying divine radiance. What? It can actually block my saber. The Lord of Sky Origin was stunned. He did not expect the power of the 2 sabers in Yi Shiwen's hands to be so tyrannical. He had relied on this treasured saber to be invincible. Even when he was dealing with the Lord of Nothingness, he had not been able to force him out. He clearly felt that in terms of casting materials, Yi Shiwen's twin blades should be inferior to his. However, the power that burst out from Yi Shiwen's hands was actually stronger than his own. His entire palm was faintly numb, and he fell into a disadvantageous position after a few collisions. Take another strike from me. Yi Shiwen laughed out loud. In his early years, he had used a blade technique. Although he had used it less in recent years, it didn't mean that his blade technique had fallen behind. He brandished his dual blades, and it looked like a waterfall was dancing in the sky. He had never used a dual blade before, but he had learned everything by himself on the road of martial arts. He had learned everything by analogy. The more Yi Shiwen fought, the more carefree he felt. The more he fought, the more spirited he became. Along with the constant analysis of the space inside his body, his dual blades also became more and more powerful. The collisions between the two sides were like one universe after another exploding. The Lord of Sky Origin's cultivation in the Blade Dao was quite frightening. Every strike was very tricky, and every strike contained unparalleled divine power. Blade Dao laws danced in the air. Even so, even though he was so brave and peerless, he was still completely suppressed by Yi Shiwen. His saber light could not even fly 10 feet away from his body. It was firmly suppressed by Yi Shiwen. Every strike of Yi Shiwen's was shocking. The circle of his defense was getting smaller and smaller. More importantly, the Lord of Sky Origin felt very sullen. He could see that the Blade Dao was definitely not Yi Shiwen's best area. This was because he could clearly feel Yi Shiwen's improvement. The improvement was shocking to the point that even at their level, Yi Shiwen's speed of improvement was a little too fast. And Yi Shiwen had actually used him as a whetstone. He was a dignified peak quasi-emperor, one of the strongest experts below the emperor of the Sky Clan. Yet, he had become a whetstone. Moreover, he had no power to resist. This was as sullen as one could get. Go to hell! Suddenly, an incomparably loud roar came from Yi Shiwen's body. A mushroom cloud rose from his body, instantly exploding the entire space. It was extremely terrifying. Ha 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 ha, I've finally succeeded. The Lord of Nothingness laughed heartily. I begged the Lord of Nothingness for this world extinguishing thunder. No matter how capable you are, you will all die. The terrifying aftermath of the explosion was still spreading out in all directions at an astonishing speed. The Lord of Sky Origin, who was closest to Yi Shiwen, was blasted far away by the shockwave. He spat out a mouthful of blood. F***ck. Even with his many years of recuperation, he could not help but blurt out these two words. The Lord of Nothingness was really too much. The world-extinguishing thunder was so powerful, but he did not warn him to quickly dodge it. He was clearly using him as bait to firmly attract Yi Shiwen's attention. He even suspected that the Lord of Nothingness wanted to take this opportunity to eliminate him and Yi Shiwen together. On the other side, although the Master of Thousand Treasures was far away and the impact was not as strong, he had destroyed many martial instruments that he had painstakingly cultivated in order to resist this terrifying shockwave. He looked at the Lord of Nothingness with an extremely ugly expression. This was originally a team that had been formed temporarily. There was no sincere cooperation at all. They had worked together just now because they saw that Yi Shiwen was difficult to deal with. Now that Yi Shiwen was about to die, how could they still have the thought of working together? They only wanted to guard against each other. Just now, the Lord of Nothingness might have had the intention to eliminate the Lord of Sky Origin as well to avoid competing with them. Just as a serious internal conflict was about to break out, they suddenly saw a shocking scene. Yi Shiwen, who had taken the attack of the world-extinguishing thunder head-on, appeared in front of everyone unscathed. It was as if that attack did not exist at all. If it were not for the fact that his entire body was filled with chaos and the space had not recovered, perhaps no one would have thought that such a terrifying attack had taken place just now. Everyone's eyes suddenly widened. The power of the world-extinguishing thunder was too terrifying. Even a peak quasi-emperor would have died from this attack. Even if he had used some kind of magic treasure to temporarily block it, he should have at least been seriously injured. However, looking at Yi Shiwen's appearance, it did not seem like he had been seriously injured at all. His body was emitting bursts of flowing light, constantly dispersing the aftermath of the explosion into the surrounding space. The space around him was constantly collapsing, and there was no way for it to recover. This was the reason why. Yi Shiwen's face was expressionless, but there was a slight fluctuation in his heart. That attack just now had also shocked him. Fortunately, he had the time robe on his body to block most of the impact. Otherwise, he would have been injured at the very least, even though he was confident that he would not have died from the explosion. It would have been impossible for him to come out unscathed. Even now, he is still dispersing the aftermath of the explosion. Attack. The Lord of Nothingness instantly attacked. He directly transformed into an endless power of nothingness. His blood essence was burning, and a shocking law light tore through everything and bombarded Yi Shiwen's body. He was burning his life and blood essence to erupt with his strongest combat power. He wanted to kill Yi Shiwen. Next was the Lord of Sky Origin. Although he had been tricked by the Lord of Nothingness just now, he still knew how to weigh the consequences. Naturally, he knew what he should do at this time. The Lord of Sky Origin seized the opportunity and slashed down with the long sword in his hand. It transformed into a shocking rainbow that cut through the sky and fell ruthlessly. The master of 10,000 treasures, countless treasures, seemed to form a long river of treasures. It directly swept out and attacked from all directions. The three of them knew how powerful Yi Shiwen was. At this time, they joined forces to kill him completely. They did not want him to have a chance to fight back. In the midst of such attacks, Yi Shiwen just stood quietly. His hair fluttered in the wind. Everyone could see with the naked eye that the power of thunder around his body was condensing like particles around him. They flowed continuously like liquid. On top of these particles, there was a layer of flowing light that was constantly flowing and wrapping around them. These attacks rushed up almost at the same time and bombarded Yi Shiwen's body fiercely. Rumble! The endless attacks were almost on the same scale as the annihilation thunder. The energy waves spread in all directions. However, it was useless. Yi Shiwen's figure was still as tall and straight as before. It was as if no power could shake him at all. Yi Shiwen's eyes began to flicker, and an astonishing power burst out. Die! Yi Shiwen took a step forward and suddenly rushed in front of the Master of Nothingness. The power of nothingness around the Lord of Nothingness spread out. However, how could Yi Shiwen give him such a chance? His hands were covered in boundless thunder energy, and he tore the power of nothingness apart. The power of nothingness was instantly torn apart. Not good! The Master of Nothingness saw that all his defenses were torn apart. A figure directly rushed into his defensive circle, and directly blasted a punch towards him. Under the endless power of thunder, this punch erupted with unimaginable shocking light. Bang! The Master of Nothingness screamed in pain. He was killed on the spot, and his body directly exploded in the air. He still wanted to hide far away and regroup. However, how could Yi Shiwen give him this opportunity? From his body, the giant devil ship suddenly flew out and slammed towards the Master of Nothingness. Ah! The Lord of Nothingness let out a blood-curdling scream as his body was completely crushed into minced meat. He had no way of resisting the giant demon warship. All his flesh and blood were devoured by the countless demons and ghosts on the giant demon warship. He screamed as he turned into ashes. After killing the Master of Nothingness, Yi Shiwen immediately rushed in the direction of the Master of 10,000 Treasures. Chapter 29-25. He's too ruthless. Does he still want to go out? He actually killed the Lord of Nothingness. It's not like he doesn't have a backer. Someone's eyes widened. Obviously, he hadn't accepted this fact. Although the competition between the celestial experts was very fierce, they would still leave some leeway between each other. They wouldn't kill each other. Moreover, the celestial experts were still in need of manpower. It was unknown how much time and resources it would take to train such a top expert. Losing one would mean losing an unknown amount of resources. Different from the allied forces, the celestial experts had the existence of Emperor-level experts. They didn't have the right to make decisions in the world. If they killed too many and angered the emperor, then no matter how strong they would be annihilated in the blink of an eye. Therefore, when they attacked, they would leave some leeway. They wouldn't kill all of a sudden. However, what they didn't know was that the person in front of them wasn't a celestial expert, but a real, living human. Therefore, their thoughts naturally couldn't be completely in line with Yi Shiwen's actions. It could even be said that they couldn't understand the meaning of Yi Shiwen's actions. "Damn it, you actually dared to kill people!" the Lord of 10,000 Treasures roared. Most importantly, he was really afraid. Yi Shiwen dared to kill people. For him, this had broken the bottom line in his heart. The next Yi Shiwen would directly kill him. Yi Shiwen instantly rushed forward. His black hair was flying. His whole body was filled with the power of thunder. Every particle of the power of thunder was like a holy kingdom. In each holy kingdom, there was a god who was chanting the Heart Sutra. This was a very powerful state. Even though Yi Shiwen had restrained many magical powers, and his combat power couldn't be at its peak, his martial power was still there. In an instant, it erupted. How can he be so powerful? The Lord of 10,000 Treasures instantly felt an amazing pressure crushing down. He almost knelt down. This was a pure suppression of martial power. He couldn't imagine how someone in the same realm could be so much stronger than him. This was beyond his understanding. Bang! Yi Shiwen ferociously punched. His fist swept across the sky, and smashed into the body of the Lord of 10,000 Treasures. Boom! An ocean of countless magic treasures swept out, but they couldn't stop Yi Shiwen's footsteps. They were directly blown away. Yi Shiwen's fist had pierced through his ocean of 10,000 magic treasures. Needless to say, his fleshly body wouldn't be able to withstand it. Although he had already tempered his body in accordance with the sacrificial refining method of the magic weapon, and had become very powerful, but unfortunately, he had encountered an even more terrifying monster like Yi Shiwen. Bang! The Lord of 10,000 Treasures was blasted away. Then, his body collapsed on the spot, and transformed into a treasure light that filled the sky. Then, Yi Shiwen chased after him, and grabbed him on the spot. "You want to refine me?" Wishful thinking. The Lord of 10,000 Treasures roared. All of his power erupted in an instant. He wanted to struggle, but it didn't take long before he was engulfed by the endless waves of demons within the demon banner. Another peerless master had fallen. It hadn't taken much time. The disparity in their martial power had become apparent once Yi Shiwen got serious. Previously, Yi Shiwen had wanted to hide it. However, after being tricked by the Lord of Nothingness, he instantly realized that he couldn't continue like this. Otherwise, he might be overturned. Seeing this, the Lord of Sky Origin was scared out of his wits. He frantically fled into the distance. However, since he had already killed 2 people in a row, Yi Shiwen didn't care anymore. He directly rushed in the direction of the Lord of Sky Origin. "Please show mercy. We are all from the celestial race. Why must we fight to the death?" An old antique spoke up. No matter who won or lost, the vitality of the celestial race would be exhausted in the end. He couldn't bear to see that happen. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care about him at all. He directly chased after the Lord of Sky Origin. "You want to kill me too? You're dead. Those big shots definitely won't let you go," the Lord of Sky Origin roared. His eyes were filled with madness as he looked at Yi Shiwen. He could already see that Yi Shiwen wouldn't give them a chance. He would directly kill them. Thinking of this, he simply went all out. The magic power in his body instantly ignited. It grew bigger and bigger. Even his soul imprint was burning. In an instant, his power surged. "You want to die? It won't be that easy," Yi Shiwen sneered. He extended his hand and grabbed the Lord of Sky Origin. The Lord of Sky Origin's terrifying martial power instantly exploded. Everything was blown to pieces in an instant. However, in the end, it couldn't escape from Yi Shiwen's palm. It didn't even shake him. It was completely absorbed by the time robe. The others didn't know that Yi Shiwen had the time robe. They only felt that Yi Shiwen's martial power was really tyrannical to a terrifying level. They were suddenly a little scared. This guy was really too scary. Many people even began to suspect that Yi Shiwen was a clone of some celestial emperor. Otherwise, how could these top-notch figures be defeated so easily and even killed? Could it be that some big shot is really here? Otherwise, how could he be so terrifying and powerful? Someone said in a trembling voice. The way they looked at Yi Shiwen was also full of fear. Yi Shiwen didn't even look at them. In his hand, he had already gathered the 7 keys. Then, he directly entered the endless storm and inserted the key into the huge stone pillar. Although the netherworld ghost wind was terrifying, it obviously couldn't shake Yi Shiwen, let alone melt him. Boom! A slow and heavy sound came. In the endless storm, above the inheritance altar, a huge crack appeared in the sky. It's here. It's really the inheritance altar. There's really an inheritance. It's not fake. Someone exclaimed. It doesn't matter if it's real or not. How many lives have been lost? Although the Lords hope that we can use this opportunity to temper ourselves, I think that the death of so many people is definitely not something that the Lords would want to see. Especially when experts of that level have died. I think it won't be long before the entire world will be shaken. Yi Shiwen looked at the crack in front of him. After a little hesitation, the demon wings behind him suddenly opened, and he instantly flew into it. There was a 7-colored space inside the inheritance altar. Yi Shiwen had just entered when he saw a broken and huge body lying quietly in this space. It looked like a small mountain. This body contained unimaginably terrifying power. The laws around him surrendered, and the rules manifested around him. The great path bloomed with waves of golden light around him. The Emperor, it's a real Emperor! Yi Shiwen immediately judged. However, the situation of this Emperor was not very good. He should have been seriously injured, and now he was probably struggling at death's door. Although this Emperor's aura was much more tyrannical than the average peak quasi-emperor, it definitely didn't have the earth-shattering power of the legendary Emperor. Therefore, Yi Shiwen easily judged. In that case, the rumor this time isn't fake, but true. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly lit up. If he wanted to go further now, the only way was to obtain a fortuitous encounter in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, it would be impossible to go further. Junior, I don't know your name, but this Emperor is about to die, and there is not much time left. You must receive my inheritance, so that he will not die in this world. An old voice sounded. Yes, Yi Shiwen quickly said. I don't care how you won, in the end, my inheritance must be passed down, otherwise, the heavens will not let you go. The old voice continued. This junior will remember, Yi Shiwen said. Swallow this medicinal pellet first. This is a part of the body of the Pill Emperor. His body has already been refined into a medicinal pellet. After you swallow it, it should be enough to help you break through to the peak of Quasi-Emperor. If I'm not wrong, you should not have truly stepped into the peak of Quasi-Emperor. The old voice said. Senior really has a keen eye. This junior has not truly stepped into the peak of Quasi-Emperor realm. Yi Shiwen said. He did not hide this point. This is rare, you have not yet stepped into the peak of Quasi-Emperor realm, but in terms of strength, you are already far superior to ordinary peak Quasi-Emperor. My Tian clan has a talent like you, it is really the Tian clan's fortune. The old voice continued. A 7-colored pill appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. On the surface of this pill, there were traces of the great Tao constantly manifesting. It was as if a waterfall was waving in the air. The overbearing and intense aura even turned into a sword light, as if it wanted to pierce through the stars in the sky. Even the naked eye could see that this medicinal pellet was extraordinary. Compared to ordinary medicinal pellets, It was like it was on a completely different level. It was completely natural, without the slightest bit of artificial sculpting. After you receive my legacy, you have to promise me one thing. I ended up like this because of the human race's Yellow Emperor. So when you achieve the Tao in the future, you have to promise me that you will exterminate the G clan of the Emperor clan and eradicate that damned human race. Not a single one of them will be spared. I will make sure that not even a chicken or a dog will be spared. The ancient voice grew more and more furious. It kept roaring like an injured beast. Chapter 29-26. Yellow Emperor. It turned out that the reason why this Emperor Lord had almost fallen was because of the Yellow Emperor. The invincible figure who founded the Emperor clan, G clan, was recognized as one of the ancestors of the human clan even now. Even among the many Emperor Lords of the same era, he was also a famous super powerhouse. Although there were the three clans of the human clan, Heavenly Sovereign Fuxi, Earthly Sovereign Shenong and others who came one after another and created the situation of the rise of the human clan, it was the human Emperor Xianyuan, who started the Emperor clan, G clan, which was founded by the Yellow Emperor. Although there were fights at that time, it was the most glorious and prosperous era of the entire human clan. I understand. Yi Shiwen nodded, but he didn't care at all. Wasn't it the most ridiculous joke to ask him to destroy the human clan? Yi Shiwen said as he picked up the medicinal pill and swallowed it. The medicinal pill transformed from the body of the alchemy emperor turned into a monstrous energy in Yi Shiwen's body, and the crazy power completely boiled in an instant. Every cell in Yi Shiwen's body seemed to be baptized by infinite energy, which was unprecedented. It should be known that with Yi Shiwen's current strength, tearing the stars and shattering the earth was just a piece of cake. The energy he possessed was already unimaginable, but now the energy in this medicinal pill made him feel like he was going to be stuffed. Yes, he was stuffed. He felt like he was completely stuffed. Every cell in his body had swallowed a huge amount of energy, which made him think that he was going to be stuffed to death. I'm going all out. Only after breaking through can I accommodate such a huge amount of energy. Yi Shiwen gritted his teeth and said. He found that he was still a little too naive. The power of the Emperor Lord was more terrifying than he imagined. It was on a completely different level from the Emperor Corpse that he had obtained previously. Calm your mind, and I will pass on the inheritance to you. That hoarse voice resounded, and then, an inexhaustible amount of information suddenly poured into Yi Shiwen's body. Yi Shiwen suddenly felt as if he had been enlightened all of a sudden. Some of the problems that he had never thought about before were now suddenly understood. Some great Daos that he had never been able to come into contact with before were now revealed to him. They were on a completely different level. They had truly reached the level of an Imperial Lord. Although they were only separated by one level, this one level was like the difference between heaven and earth. That was a brand new domain. Whether it was life or the Great Path, it was a domain that no one had ever come into contact with before. That feeling was like looking down from an airplane and seeing how small the mountains were. In the past, due to the height he was standing at, the situation where he was blinded by a single leaf had instantly disappeared. His level had increased by more than just a little. Although D&I had an emperor to guide him and give him the inheritance, he was not bad either. He had also obtained the full inheritance of a dying emperor. Both sides were suddenly back to the same starting line. What's more, with this medicinal pill, the problem of his insufficient martial power was instantly made up. Everything was completely different now. That feeling of looking down on all the mountains even made Yi Shiwen feel a little lightheaded, as if he was wandering in the ocean of the Great Path. That kind of feeling was simply addictive. It turned out that the more information poured into Yi Shiwen's mind, his cultivation began to improve crazily, and his martial power also grew at an astonishing speed. That feeling was as if endless waves were sweeping towards him, and he was about to be completely submerged. Boom! Not knowing how long had passed, the martial power in his body skyrocketed, and the cultivation in his mind also improved at an astonishing speed. Finally, Yi Shiwen, who had been stuck in the late stage of quasi-emperor, finally stepped into the peak of quasi-emperor. All of this was logical. Whether it was the accumulation of power or the improvement of cultivation, it was all done quietly. Everything was so smooth, and after rushing into this realm, Yi Shiwen's martial power continued to rise at an astonishing speed, really climbing towards the peak of this realm. Suddenly, the endless torrent of energy and information finally stopped, and an angry roar came. "You are not from the Tian clan." The old emperor finally came to his senses. The guy in front of him was not from the Tian clan at all, so his inheritance was given to a person who should not have been given. The most abominable thing was that he had also discovered from Yi Shiwen's memories that he was actually a human. Yes, he had also seen some fragments of Yi Shiwen's memories during the inheritance. He had discovered Yi Shiwen's true identity, and had immediately become furious. Just now, he vowed that Yi Shiwen would destroy the human clan. Now that he thought about it, it was simply ridiculous. Otherwise, why would he say such words? "Damned human, how dare you make a fool out of an emperor?" The aged voice was instantly enraged. Yi Shiwen absorbed the last bit, and suddenly felt a little regretful. Although his absorption speed was very fast, and with the help of the mysterious space, he almost digested the endless inheritance of the Great Way at the same time. But after all, he was still lacking a little, and could not completely absorb it. But even so, this was really enough. He had completely stepped into the peak of the quasi-emperor realm, and his true realm was not inferior to the original Mahasvara and the others, and his martial power was profound to an unknown extent. Now, if he were to face the Lord of Nothingness again, he would only need one move to kill the Lord of Nothingness. He had such confidence that he had completely completed a kind of transformation. It's a pity that I did not expect to be able to absorb the last bit, but this is enough. I am really about to step into that realm, and all the preparations are sufficient. Yi Shiwen didn't know the extent of his current strength. No one had been able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him since ancient times. However, he knew that he wouldn't be too weak once he was promoted to the emperor level. In fact, he wouldn't be at the bottom of the same realm as him. Such accumulation was hard, but once he was promoted, it would completely transform into his advantage. "Boy, you are really arrogant. A mere human dares to touch this place, and even dares to accept my inheritance. It seems that you are really crazy." The old voice tried to be as calm as possible, but it contained unimaginable anger. Originally, he was very optimistic about Yi Shiwen, because he had found such a talent, and perhaps he had played a part in the rise of the heavenly clan, but he did not expect that it was actually an outsider who pretended to be one of their clansmen. How could this not make him feel angry? More importantly, he felt a strong threat. If such a person was really allowed to achieve the Great Way, the heavenly clan would not have a day of glory in the future, and it would not be possible to get out of this seal. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. If I did not come here, my cultivation would not be able to grow so fast. Yi Shiwen said lightly. "Do you think you can leave now?" As soon as the voice of the old voice fell, he felt that the entire inheritance altar began to shake violently. "Do you think you can still stop me now?" Yi Shiwen looked coldly at the incomparably huge body in front of him. "You are hiding in the inheritance altar because it can stop the flow of time here, and you are struggling at death's door. As long as you leave the inheritance altar, you will not be able to suppress your injuries, and I am afraid that you will die soon." Yi Shiwen saw through everything. He had the time robe in his body, and it could be said that he was extremely sensitive to the power of time. Almost from the moment he came in, he had already seen through all this, so he was not afraid. Everything was under his control. You really hit the goose all day long, and in the end, the goose will peck your eyes. The old voice sneered, as if he wanted to vent his anger at being deceived. However, since you have come in, then don't think of escaping. Today I must leave you, a scourge, alive for my clan. If a person like you appears in my heavenly clan, you will certainly be a genius of the generation. However, if you appear in other clans, it will certainly be a great disaster for my heavenly clan. If you can do it, then give it a try. Yi Shiwen's expression was incomparably cold. Since it was obvious that there was no way to reconcile, it was necessary to fight. If it was a peak sovereign emperor, Yi Shiwen would not be a match even if he was 10 times stronger. That was a completely different level of life, just like a human and an ant. But now, this was a dying sovereign emperor, and he was a worthy opponent. Especially with Yi Shiwen's current cultivation and realm, he had long surpassed the peak of the quasi-emperor realm. Ordinary people were no longer qualified to be his opponent. I think you are really courting death. Don't think that you are invincible just because you killed a few peak quasi-emperors. Do you think that I am the same as those people? How ridiculous! Even if I have become like this, it is still not a problem to kill you, the old voice said slowly. His voice was very loud, shaking the heaven and earth. His words were cold and ruthless. In the face of the young geniuses of the foreign clans, he restored that kind of ruthlessness, restored the mentality of a sovereign emperor, that kind of invincible in the world, and he did not care about those under the sovereign emperor. Rumble. There was a burst of violent fluctuations, but Yi Shiwen only saw that the huge body slowly moved. His broken body also recovered at an astonishing speed, as if he had recovered to the peak. However, Yi Shiwen could see that this was a temporary recovery after burning his qi and blood. It was not a true recovery. He was injured by Emperor Huang Xianyuan, and it must be a real Dao injury. If it could recover, he would not have to hide in the inheritance altar to linger for a while. This battle would be the battle where Yi Shiwen came out, and also the battle where he would end his life. Chapter 29-27. At this time, there was no room for maneuver. Moreover, he did not think that this would be his last battle. As a dignified emperor lord, even if he was seriously injured, killing a quasi-emperor was still a piece of cake for him. The old emperor lord had a strong vitality and unimaginable pressure. It was impossible to see that he had been injured in the past. He looked like he was struggling to catch his breath. A true emperor-monarch, at this stage, still had his dignity. He revealed his true form. This was a middle-aged man with a head of long golden hair that looked like traces of a great Tao. His eyes were silver-white and contained a terrifying demonic power. Although he was in human form, he was not from the human race, but from the celestial race. In fact, there were humanoid and beast-shaped celestials in the celestial race. They were all different. I will take your life in one battle. Although you have obtained the inheritance, I will eliminate you in one battle and eliminate future troubles. It is not considered a loss. The old monarch said coldly. His voice was incomparably old. Only his voice revealed how weak he was right now. Otherwise, how could an expert of that level age? Time was stagnant for them. It could even be reversed. It was impossible for them to age. Around him, countless stars appeared, turning the entire inheritance altar into a universe. Countless suns, moons, and stars were revolving around the old Emperor Lord. Each star was engraved with unimaginable martial arts of the Great Path. Among them, the martial arts that he had learned were manifested. On each star, there seemed to be a figure chanting ancient sutras on top of it. Yi Shiwen recognized some of them, but he did not know how to use them. Although he had obtained the inheritance, there were no martial arts in it. Originally, the old Emperor Lord was afraid that Yi Shiwen would be affected by his Great Way and would not be able to achieve the Great Way. So although he had received the inheritance, he had actually only received some basic things such as understanding of the Great Way. There was nothing too personal. However, Yi Shiwen understood from the inheritance that this kind of martial arts was terrifying. It was almost the entire universe to the extreme. It could transform such a universe in one's body. Human, today is your last day. From today onwards, your name will be erased from this world. What a pity. Originally, you might have been able to take that final step and stand shoulder to shoulder with us. But now, it's all you can do. The old emperor said slowly. His blood essence was burning, and there was a hint of pity in his words. Perhaps he felt that Yi Shiwen couldn't escape. This is the battle that brought me into the world, but it will be the battle that brings you to an end. Yi Shiwen sneered and said, whether you want to admit it or not, you have to admit that your era has passed, and this is our era. Your era. Ha 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 ha, you are too naive. In this world, it will never be your era. Only the Emperor Lord will exist forever. The old emperor laughed heartily, and strange patterns even crawled up his face. It was as if he was releasing some ancient spell. Countless ancient laws and great Daos appeared at this time. Whoosh! The old emperor attacked directly towards Yi Shiwen. A real expert of the Emperor Lord level attack. It was not the Emperor's corpse, nor was it the spirit of the Emperor Lord. It was a real Emperor Lord. There was a loud noise, and the old Emperor Lord's whole body was shining with golden light. All kinds of laws were dancing, and divine marks were manifesting. This was his special secret technique. He blasted a palm directly towards Yi Shiwen. In his palm, there were countless stars rotating and exploding. Then, he used the power in them and blasted towards Yi Shiwen in an instant. In an instant, the entire space shattered. However, the inheritance altar was still extremely sturdy. This was something that was built for the sake of the survival of the Emperor Monarchs. Naturally, it was extraordinary. Even a battle of this level could not cause the entire inheritance altar to collapse. Both of them did not want to leave the inheritance altar. They each had their own concerns. Once the old Emperor Lord left the inheritance altar, his Dao injuries would immediately act up. At that time, he would not be able to live for long. And Yi Shiwen was also not willing to leave. Once he left the inheritance altar, the old Emperor Lord was likely to call out his identity. If his identity was called out in this place, he would not be able to escape. At that time, he would be delayed by this old guy, and when the other Emperor Lords arrived, it would really be a dead end. So, both of them almost tacitly chose this place as the battlefield. Yi Shiwen roared and directly rushed towards the old Emperor Lord. In this place, he could attack to his heart's content. The time robe also appeared on his body. There was no need to hide. 6 paths of reincarnation fist, suppress for me. Yi Shiwen blasted out a punch, which turned into a huge 6 paths of reincarnation wheel. It directly blasted into the old Emperor Lord's Star River, collapsing the Star River, and almost sweeping towards the old Emperor Lord. At this moment, Yi Shiwen became very dangerous. He did not dare to hold back at all. In the face of such a top-notch Emperor Lord, he did not dare to hold back at all. Otherwise, the one who would die would definitely be him. Behind Yi Shiwen, there was a huge phoenix flying in the sky. When it opened its mouth, endless flames were spewed out. The flames burned in all directions, and directly swept towards the old Emperor Lord. 6 paths of reincarnation fist, Nanmingli fire, these are all amazing skills. You actually learned so many magical skills. I really can't let you live. The old Emperor Lord's eyes were very sharp. He did not know how many martial arts experts used, and there was almost nothing he did not know. He immediately recognized it. The murderous intention in his eyes became more and more intense. Because of this, Yi Shiwen wanted to die even more. Such a person was really a huge hidden danger for the heavenly clan. Break for me. In the old Emperor Lord's palm, there was a star river of the universe revolving. All of Yi Shiwen's attacks fell into his star river of the universe, and could not really hurt him. Buddhist kingdom in the palm magical skill? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and immediately recognized it. It was very similar to the legendary Buddhist magical power, the 3,000 Buddhist country in the palm. Many sects also had similar magical powers, such as the universe in the sleeve and so on. However, it was very rare for someone to be able to use it to this extent and easily annihilate Yi Shiwen's offensive. Humph, your skills are good, but you have to understand that such ordinary skills are still not enough for us Emperor Lords, said the old Emperor Lord coldly. Shroud for me. Suddenly, there was a huge star river between the heaven and the earth. Then, the star river suddenly reversed and instantly covered the sky. There was an earth-shattering power that instantly shrouded Yi Shiwen. Humph! Yi Shiwen did not care at all, and he did not have the slightest fear. He stretched his arms directly, and his left hand directly transformed into the sky flipping seal, and his right hand transformed into the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. He did not retreat at all, and directly rushed into the old Emperor Lord's star river. Countless stars instantly exploded around him, and many of them were blasted away by his fist. They could not hurt Yi Shiwen at all. It was a kind of immortal divine power, and even a kind of aura similar to that of the old Emperor Lord appeared on Yi Shiwen's body. The vitality of his whole body was surging, and it was burning. The entire star river collapsed. Yi Shiwen was too strong, and his vitality even penetrated through the heaven and earth, and burned everything. Die! The old Emperor Lord shouted, and everything was restored. Those stars that were blasted away by Yi Shiwen recovered at an astonishing speed, and then continued to suppress Yi Shiwen. I want to see to what extent you can persist. The old Emperor Lord looked at Yi Shiwen coldly, and watched as the star river once again engulfed Yi Shiwen. Everything seemed to be restored again, as if it had not disappeared at all. To what extent can I persist? I must persist more than you. The fist is afraid of the young and the strong. You are old, and you are seriously injured. You can't recover at all, and you still want to compete with me in vitality? Yi Shiwen laughed, and he was not afraid at all. Sigh, maybe. This is also a kind of fate. The old Emperor Lord looked at Yi Shiwen, and revealed 2 rows of white teeth. His smile was a bit creepy. I didn't expect you to appear. This is great, ha 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 ha. With my current cultivation, there is no one who can withstand my possession. But you have appeared, and you have such ability. The old Emperor Lord's expression became more and more awe-inspiring. You want to possess me? Yi Shiwen sneered. Originally, if you were a hero of my Tian clan, I might not necessarily have made such a determination. But who asked you to be a human? There is no one more suitable than you. Only you can bear my path, and let me live a second life, said the old Emperor Lord coldly. So, even if you didn't find out that I am a human, you would still have attempted to possess me? Yi Shiwen suddenly smiled and asked. Yes, I don't care about ordinary mediocre people, and I have no use for them. But you are different after all. With such talent and such a body, I won't come across you even once in millions or millions of years. Who wouldn't want to live? The old Emperor Lord grinned and said, You won't understand how important it is to be able to live well until you are on the verge of death. As long as I can possess you, it is not impossible for me to achieve my path again with the basic condition of your body. Then you better go to hell. God has given you a chance to attain enlightenment. You're already in such a miserable state, and you still want a second chance? You're really delusional. Yi Shiwen roared. His entire body instantly leaped up like a Kuanping descending to the world. Chapter 29-28. Yi Shiwen leaped out like a rock, and directly crossed the entire illusionary galaxy. All the stars were smashed in an instant. The principles that belonged to the Emperor realm had just manifested, and were instantly smashed into pieces. They turned into the most basic source of magic power, and rushed in all directions. Yi Shiwen was like a rock. Fortunately, there was no one else in this altar space. Otherwise, this magic power shock wave alone could annihilate and kill a divine king. Although the strength of the two was still not comparable to the Emperor, it was far above the ordinary quasi-emperors due to various reasons. Your strength is indeed unexpected, but since I can make you like this, I can also destroy you. The old Emperor suddenly attacked. His strength was raised to the limit, and his speed was fast to the peak. All kinds of terrifying auras were evolving at an astonishing speed. This was a real emperor. Even if he was seriously injured, it was not a joke. In my opinion, your strength is nothing at all. Beat me first, then you can talk big. Yi Shiwen laughed and did not take it seriously. Boom. Around him, the sun, the moon, the mountains, and the rivers emerged. His martial arts also began to burn. All kinds of chaotic laws were arranged in a dense and orderly manner, interweaving into a huge domain. This domain devoured and smashed everything. The two of them fought to the peak in an instant. It was unknown how many times they had fought. If they were fighting outside, even the world would be penetrated by their attack. Is this all you have? If you don't show your true strength, then I will really kill an emperor, Yi Shiwen said. You don't need to worry. I don't need to use my peak to deal with you, the old emperor said calmly. If it was not a critical moment, he did not want to burn to the peak. It was too painful. The reason why he was hiding in the inheritance altar was because his injuries were too severe. With the recovery ability of a monarch, there seemed to be nothing in the world that couldn't be healed. But even so, he was still hiding in the inheritance altar. One could imagine how severe his injuries were. The result of awakening at will was that he might perish completely. It was useless even if he hid in this inheritance altar. It hadn't reached that step yet. He didn't want to perish together with Yi Shiwen. He still wanted to seize Yi Shiwen's body. If you don't use all your tricks, then I'm really going to make my move. Yi Shiwen's eyes flickered with the radiance of wisdom. He thought in his heart, this old emperor is indeed an expert. His combat experience is extremely rich. What he said just now was not only to deter the old monarch, it was also the truth. By forcing the old Empyrean Lord to ascend to the peak, he was forcing the old Empyrean Lord to expend his chi and blood, exhausting him to death. Originally, it was impossible for an ordinary person to compete with an emperor in terms of chi and blood. However, it was different now. Yi Shiwen was too strong. It was hard to say whether there had been such a quasi-emperor since ancient times. Moreover, the emperor in front of him was unprecedentedly weak. If this dragged on, it would be normal for the two sides to fight for hundreds or even thousands of years. But this was the Tian clan's territory, and it was an important place for the Tian clan. This wasn't the Tian clan's main camp. There were no experts who could keep him in check. If he could come and go as he pleased, once he provoked a sovereign emperor, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although the entire inheritance altar was sealed, it was hard to say if the old emperor had any other means to spread the news. He had to end the battle quickly and force the old emperor to ascend. At that time, even if he couldn't kill the old emperor, he would exhaust him to death. And obviously, the old emperor on the opposite side had also seen through Yi Shiwen's plot. Yi Shiwen had experienced hundreds of battles, so he didn't have any advantage in this aspect. He guessed the other party's thoughts almost at the same time. Therefore, Yi Shiwen simply didn't provoke the old emperor and directly went head-on. No matter how powerful the old emperor was, he had also been seriously injured. This was Yi Shiwen's biggest advantage. Yi Shiwen roared, and the chi and blood in his body boiled. The time robe appeared in an instant. If he wanted to fight with a real emperor, he couldn't do it without the protection of a Dao tool. With the protection of a Dao tool, he was confident that he could fight with the old emperor without falling into a disadvantageous position. Yi Shiwen just blasted out a punch. His fist could shatter stars. It was his biggest reliance. With the protection of the time robe, Yi Shiwen's movements became bigger and bigger. Sometimes, he didn't even care about defense at all. Such a violent attack frequently shook the entire space of the inheritance altar. Although the inheritance altar was made of special materials, it also began to shake in the face of such a level of collision, and the space was shaking violently. Die! Yi Shiwen's attack became more and more violent. His fists frequently turned into the 6 paths of reincarnation fists. Every punch would directly hit the protective shield around the old emperor. In the face of Yi Shiwen's attack, the old emperor was constantly retreating from time to time. This was simply incredible in his battle career. He was forced to this extent by a quasi-emperor. It was simply a miracle. Even if it was said, not many people would believe it. But all this had happened because of the help of the time robe. Originally, Yi Shiwen wasn't strong enough to fight against the old emperor. But if he wanted to fight against the old emperor's body with his physical body, he would definitely suffer a big loss in the end. However, Yi Shiwen didn't take the ordinary path at all. He didn't follow the ordinary routine at all. The power of the time robe was also strong enough. Not only could it protect Yi Shiwen, but it could also enhance Yi Shiwen's punching technique at the same time. Yi Shiwen was indeed extraordinary. He could integrate the time power of the time robe into his punching technique. Otherwise, the time robe wouldn't have been able to enhance his punching technique to such a terrifying extent. It was precisely because of the time robe that Yi Shiwen truly had the capital to fight against the old emperor. He had turned from a guy who was passable to the eye into an extremely troublesome guy. This is the end. The old emperor swatted away Yi Shiwen's earth-shattering punch. Around him, the power of countless stars had completely evolved at this moment. This was not an illusion at all. Instead, he had evolved a huge galaxy according to the laws between heaven and earth. This was the means of a real emperor. Compared to an emperor, a quasi-emperor was nothing. They weren't on the same level at all. A quasi-emperor could destroy a world, but an emperor could create a world. Their use of the power of laws was already on a completely different level. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been possible to open up such a huge continent in this endless chaos. What kind of great feat was this? A world that could originally only be formed naturally had been artificially created just like that. The real world and the real galaxy had condensed together and blasted towards Yi Shiwen. Its power was more than just a little stronger than when it had been illusionary. Building the forest was like being rejected by the world and being attacked by the world. It was a feeling that made it hard for people to breathe. This was the means of an emperor. It was also a means that Yi Shiwen didn't possess. He hadn't reached that realm yet. He couldn't do anything about it. However, he had a tough way to break through with force. It didn't matter what kind of technique or magical power one had. It was a fact that his vitality wasn't as vigorous as Yi Shiwen's. It was also a fact that he wasn't at his peak state. Yi Shiwen operated his spiritual power, which was burning fiercely. Countless rays of martial arts were like golden lights that filled the sky, spreading in all directions. Yi Shiwen's many martial arts incarnations had all fused and condensed together. This was an amazing means. Yi Shiwen's strength instantly skyrocketed. Although it couldn't be compared to the level that he could have improved in the past, the increase in his skills was also a lot. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist smashed into the galaxy, and the entire galaxy collapsed in an instant. The old emperor was a little surprised. Even though he had used a means that belonged to an emperor, he still couldn't suppress Yi Shiwen. This guy was too strong. Even if he couldn't cultivate in the future, just his current state alone was a huge trouble for the celestial race. The killing intent in his eyes was even more intense. He couldn't wait to tear Yi Shiwen into pieces. It's a pity. Although you've comprehended some things, a quasi-emperor is still a quasi-emperor after all. You don't have the ability to display it. The clothes on the old emperor's body fluttered without any wind. His power was even more intense. At this moment, it even gave people a feeling that he was almost restored to the peak of the emperor realm. Any of his attacks could kill a peak of the emperor realm. How terrifying was that? His attacks swept out like a chain and bombarded towards Yi Shiwen. In the face of such attacks, Yi Shiwen wasn't willing to show weakness. Du Hong, who was going tit for tat with him, didn't show weakness at all. I remember now. If I'm not mistaken, you should be the unluckiest person in history, the great Star Emperor. Yi Shiwen suddenly remembered who the old emperor in front of him was. Because he was famous, he was famous. Also, he wasn't famous. Among the many emperors of the celestial race, his strength wasn't the strongest, but his reputation wasn't small. It was because after he became an emperor, he didn't have any achievements. Because in his first battle, he encountered Emperor Huang Xianyuan, who was in the limelight and was at the peak of his life. Emperor Huang Xianyuan was a super fierce person who could fight several people at once. Hence, tragedy struck. In the first battle, he was directly crippled. Now, Yi Shiwen suddenly understood why he had such a great resentment towards Emperor Huang Xianyuan and the human race. It was simply a blood feud. Anyone who achieved the Tao and became an emperor, becoming one of the strongest people in the world, should enjoy supreme glory and honor. Although there were emperors who fell in the past, they had been famous for a long time and enjoyed what they could. But he was directly crippled when he just made his debut. The resentment here could cross the long river of history. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.